The sky outside was gray as Wendy sat across from Elaine's immaculate desk, watching her boss flip through the promotion application with practiced disinterest. 5 years of sacrificed weekends, missed family dinners, and endless overtime hours condensed into a 20-page portfolio that Elaine barely glanced at before setting it aside. "I appreciate your enthusiasm," Elaine said, adjusting her designer glasses, "but I've reviewed your application thoroughly, and while your work has been adequate, I don't believe you're qualified for senior management, perhaps in another year or two." Adequate. The word dropped between them like a stone. "I maintained the department's highest client satisfaction ratings. I personally saved the Lawford account when everyone else had written it off. I haven't taken a full weekend off in 3 years." But I only smiled and nodded, the practiced expression I'd perfected in corporate America. "I understand. Thank you for the feedback. I'm glad we're on the same page," Elaine replied, already checking her watch. "The Ellison proposal needs your attention today. They've requested additional metrics before signing." As I gathered my things, Elaine was already typing an email, my career disappointment already forgotten. I walked past the corner office that should have been mine, with its window view and glass door where my name belonged. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't sad or even angry. She looked calculating. I started the engine and made 2 decisions that would change everything. I would cancel my upcoming vacation, and I would stop writing my daily operational guides. No one at the office knew it yet, but their perfect system was about to crash without its invisible support beam. Before I tell you what happened next, you might be wondering why so many people feel stuck in careers where they're undervalued. If my story resonates with you, make sure to like and subscribe. I share a new career strategy every week that might just change your professional life. Now, back to what happened after that meeting. My name is Amelia Carlton, and until that meeting, I was the most reliable employee at Meridian Solutions. Not the most visible or the highest paid, but the one who kept everything running while others took credit. I'm methodical by nature, with an almost photographic memory for systems and processes. Growing up with 4 younger siblings taught me to solve problems before they exploded, a skill that transferred perfectly to corporate life. When I joined the company 5 years ago, I'd inherited a catastrophic mess. The previous team leader had departed abruptly after a disagreement with management, taking all procedural knowledge with them. No documentation, no transition notes, not even passwords to critical systems. The department was in chaos. Clients were threatening to leave, and nobody knew how to fix it. I spent 3 months reverse engineering every workflow, staying until midnight decoding spreadsheets and reconstructing client histories. I created detailed guides for every process, color-coded, indexed, and meticulously organized. My boss Elaine never bothered to learn these systems. Why would she when I handled everything so smoothly? "You're a natural problem solver," she'd say during my performance reviews, always followed by a modest raise that never matched my contributions. The company had recently landed a contract with Ellison Enterprises, a major client worth millions in annual revenue. I'd built that relationship from nothing, staying late to accommodate their overseas time zone and learning their industry thoroughly. Elaine had attended exactly 3 meetings, mostly to claim credit during quarterly executive reviews. Each morning, I arrived at 7:30 in the morning to prepare briefing notes for Elaine before her 9 o'clock management meeting. Each evening, I sent comprehensive updates on all active projects. In between, I put out fires before anyone noticed smoke. The morning after my rejected promotion, something changed inside me. I arrived at exactly 9 o'clock. Not 7:30, not 8:45, exactly 9. I drafted no briefing notes. I answered emails directly addressed to me and ignored the rest. When a crisis erupted with a supplier, I directed it to the appropriate department instead of solving it myself as usual. By lunch, 3 people had stopped by my desk with confused expressions. "Amelia, did you see the thread about the Lawford scheduling conflict?" asked Peter from accounts. "Yes," I replied, continuing to type. He waited for more, shifting awkwardly when nothing came. "So, can you fix it like you usually do?" I looked up from my screen. That's actually under procurement scope. I forwarded it to Diane. His eyebrows rose slightly. But you always handle these things. I've been advised to focus more on my assigned responsibilities, I said with a small smile. I'm trying to demonstrate that I understand my proper place in the organization. By 5 p.m., I packed up my belongings and left. No extra hours, no taking work home. On my drive, I canceled the cabin reservation for my upcoming vacation, the first real break I'd planned in 3 years. Instead, I would be present for the system's inevitable collapse. That evening, my phone buzzed with work notifications. I silenced it and spent time with my daughter Elena, baking chocolate chip cookies, something I hadn't done in months. As we laughed over misshapen cookie dough, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Mom, why are you home early? Elena asked, licking batter from a spoon. I paused, considering how to explain corporate politics to a 10-year-old. I decided my time was valuable, honey, and I wanted to spend more of it with you. She beamed. Can we do this tomorrow too? Absolutely, I promised, ignoring the phone vibrating insistently on the counter. By the next morning, cracks were showing at work. The Ellison client had requested urgent changes to their implementation plan, changes only I understood how to make. Elaine attempted to lead the response team but quickly became overwhelmed without my usual detailed briefings. Where are the process notes for the Ellison customizations? She demanded, appearing at my desk at 10:30. They're in the shared drive, I replied pleasantly. Under client implementations. I mentioned it in last month's department meeting. There are hundreds of files there. Which one specifically? I pulled up the folder on my screen. The master document is called Ellison Enterprise Integration, Complete Process Documentation. It's organized by module with tabbed sections. Elaine stared at the 200-page document with barely concealed horror. Can you just handle this directly? The client is waiting. I'd be happy to, I replied, but I have the quarterly compliance review this afternoon. I can get to Ellison first thing tomorrow morning. Her face tightened. This can't wait until tomorrow. I understand. Would you like me to reschedule the compliance review? It's due to the regulators by end of day. She left without answering, her heels clicking aggressively down the hallway. That evening, I turned off all work notifications and took Elena to the park. My personal phone remained silent beside me on the bench as I watched her on the swings, her laughter carrying across the playground. For the first time in years, I was fully present in my personal life. When we returned home, I checked my work phone once. 79 missed calls from various work numbers. Voicemails ranged from confused to desperate to furious. The Ellison team was threatening to pull their contract. 3 systems had developed unexpected issues, all documented in my guides, which nobody had bothered to read. The quarterly compliance report due to regulators was still incomplete. I set the phone down and slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I arrived at precisely 9 o'clock in the morning again. The office atmosphere had transformed overnight. Harried colleagues rushed between meeting rooms. Elaine was visible through her office glass, gesturing frantically on a video call. The regional director's assistant was pacing by the elevator banks. I settled at my desk and methodically organized my tasks for the day. Where have you been? Peter hissed, appearing beside me with wild eyes. Everything's falling apart. Elaine's been trying to reach you since yesterday afternoon. I left at 5 o'clock, I replied calmly. My work hours are 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, as specified in my contract. But the Ellison crisis, what about it? His mouth opened and closed. They're threatening to walk. Nobody can figure out how to implement the changes they need. I nodded thoughtfully. That process requires special handling. It's all documented in the guide I created last year. Nobody can make sense of your documentation without you explaining it, he almost shouted. Before I could respond, Elaine's assistant appeared. Amelia, emergency meeting in the conference room, now. I gathered a notebook and pen, walking unhurriedly to the conference room where Elaine sat with the regional director, Byron Wallace. Their faces were grim, folders spread across the table. Amelia, Byron said, relief evident in his voice. Thank goodness. We need your help with this Ellison situation immediately. I sat down and placed my notebook on the table. Of course, how can I assist? Elaine's face was tight with controlled fury. Let's cut to the chase. What will it take for you to fix this? The promotion? It's yours. I tilted my head slightly. That's a generous offer, but I've been contacted by a competitor. They've offered me a senior management position with a substantial salary increase. Apparently, they believe I'm qualified. The room went silent. Byron's eyes widened while Elaine's narrowed dangerously. You're leaving? Byron asked. When? I haven't accepted their offer yet, I replied. I was taking time to consider my options. Name your price, Byron said immediately. Whatever they're offering, we'll match it. I smiled politely. It's not just about compensation. It's about recognition, respect, and opportunity. The Ellison client specifically asked for you by name, Elaine interjected. You can't possibly leave now. Interesting, I said. So did 4 others in the past month. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. Here's my 2 weeks' notice. I'll help with the transition as my contract requires. Elaine reached for the folder, but Byron was faster. He opened it, scanned the contents, then closed it decisively. This won't be necessary, he said firmly. Amelia, I'd like to speak with you privately in my office. As I stood to follow him, Elaine remained seated, her knuckles white against the polished table. The company's response to my resignation was about to reveal exactly how much they had undervalued me all along, and what they were willing to do to keep me now that they understood my true worth. I followed Byron to his corner office, aware of the curious glances from colleagues as we passed. His space was minimalist, but impressive. Awards and industry recognitions lined one wall, while floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. He gestured for me to sit in the chair across from his desk. I've been watching your contributions for some time, Byron said, folding his hands on his desk, though apparently not closely enough. I remained silent, letting him continue. The situation with Elaine concerns me, he admitted. This is the first I'm hearing about your promotion being denied. Why didn't you come to me directly? Chain of command, I replied simply. Elaine is my supervisor. Going over her head would have been inappropriate. He nodded slowly. Admirable, but perhaps misguided in this case. Tell me honestly, what would it take to keep you here? I considered my words carefully. Recognition of my actual contributions, appropriate compensation, and a position where I can implement the strategies I've developed instead of just executing someone else's vision. Byron studied me for a long moment. I'm creating a new position, Director of Operational Systems, reporting directly to me. Double your current salary, full remote flexibility 3 days a week, and authority over departmental workflow design. The position is yours if you want it. I didn't respond immediately, which seemed to surprise him. Is that not sufficient? He asked. It's very generous, I acknowledged, but I need to be clear about something. I'm not using a competing offer as leverage. There really is another company waiting for my decision. Byron leaned back. What can they offer that we can't match or exceed? A fresh start, I said honestly. No history of being overlooked. No colleagues who see me as support staff rather than leadership. Fair point, he conceded. But consider this. You've built systems here that you understand intimately. You've cultivated client relationships that trust you. Starting over means rebuilding all of that from scratch. He was right, of course. 5 years of institutional knowledge wasn't easily replaced, but neither was the feeling of being consistently undervalued. I'll need some time to consider, I said finally. Of course, take the weekend, but I need an answer by Monday morning. He stood, signaling the end of our meeting. And Amelia? I'd appreciate if you could help stabilize the Ellison situation before you make any final decisions. I nodded. I'll handle Ellison personally today. When I returned to my desk, an email from Byron was already waiting, outlining the new position offer in writing. The salary figure made me blink twice. It was more than double what I currently earned. The job description could have been written specifically for my skill set. I was gathering materials for the Ellison call when Elaine appeared beside my desk, her expression carefully neutral. We need to talk, she said quietly. Not here. Lunch? I have the Ellison call at noon, I replied. After that then, my office at 2. I nodded, already turning my attention to the crisis at hand. The Ellison team was frustrated but relieved when I joined the call. Their demands were reasonable. They needed customizations that would normally take weeks implemented within days. I walked them through a phased approach that would prioritize their most critical needs while building toward their complete vision. "This is exactly why we wanted to work with your company," their director said. "You understand our business needs, not just technical specifications." After the call, I documented the solution in clear steps and sent it to the implementation team with explicit instructions. Normally, I would have handled every aspect myself, but today I delegated appropriately, making myself available for questions, but not taking ownership of the execution. At 2 o'clock, I knocked on Elaine's door. She looked different, smaller somehow, with dark circles under her eyes, suggesting a sleepless night. "Close the door," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I understand Byron offered you a new position." "He did," I confirmed. She nodded slowly. "I won't pretend to be happy about it, but I understand why he did it. You're valuable to the company." I waited, sensing there was more. "I owe you an apology," she continued, the words seemingly difficult for her. "I've relied on your competence without appropriately acknowledging it or rewarding it." "May I ask you something?" I said, genuinely curious. "When you said I wasn't qualified for senior management, what specifically did you think I was lacking?" Elaine shifted uncomfortably. "You've always been more technical, the behind-the-scenes problem solver. Senior management requires visibility, presence, political savvy. In other words, I do the work while others take the spotlight." She had the grace to look embarrassed. "That's oversimplifying." "Is it?" I asked. "The Ellison contract who presented the winning strategy to the executive team." "I did, but based on the proposal I developed, the client retention initiative last quarter that saved 4 major accounts, who received the leadership award? That was a team effort. A team I led, coordinated, and created all materials for." I leaned forward slightly. "I'm not lacking qualifications, Elaine. I've simply allowed others to stand on my shoulders while remaining invisible." The silence between us stretched uncomfortably. "Are you taking Byron's offer?" she finally asked. "I haven't decided. If you stay," she said carefully, "things will be different between us." "Yes," I agreed. "They will." The weekend gave me time to think clearly away from office politics. I took Elena to the Science Museum on Saturday, something I'd been promising for months, but never found time for. On Sunday, I called my sister for advice. "What does your gut tell you?" she asked after I explained the situation. "That I've outgrown the box they put me in," I replied. "But I'm not sure if Byron's offer changes that or just makes the box more comfortable." "Would you be reporting to Elaine in this new role?" "No, directly to Byron." "And what happens to Elaine?" It was a good question. Byron didn't say specifically, but reading between the lines, I think her position is being reconsidered. My sister was quiet for a moment. "So your options are to take a fresh start elsewhere, or accept a promotion that might result in your former boss being demoted?" Put that way, the choice felt different. "I don't want revenge against Elaine," I said slowly. "I just want recognition for my work." "Are you sure about that?" my sister challenged. "Because from what you've told me, part of you would enjoy seeing her face the consequences of underestimating you." Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. Was that what I wanted? To see Elaine humbled? To watch her realize how much she'd depended on me while simultaneously dismissing my contributions? By Monday morning, I had made my decision. I arrived early, 7:30 a.m., my old starting time, and went directly to Byron's office. His assistant wasn't at her desk yet, but his door was open. "You're early," he noted, looking up from his computer. "I wanted to give you my answer before the day gets busy," I explained, taking the seat across from him. "And? I'm accepting your offer with 2 conditions." His eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm listening." "First, I want to build my own team. Full hiring authority for 3 positions that I believe are essential." Byron nodded. "Reasonable? And the second?" "Elaine remains in her current position." This clearly surprised him. "After how she treated you? Why?" Because replacing her doesn't solve the structural problems in how the department functions, and because I don't want my first leadership act to be perceived as revenge. He studied me with new interest. That's unexpected and politically astute. I've learned a few things watching from the sidelines, I replied. Very well. Elaine stays, though her department will now coordinate through your office for operational matters. Thank you. No, Amelia, Byron said, extending his hand. Thank you for staying. The announcement will go out this morning. I suggest you prepare for quite a bit of reaction. He wasn't wrong. The company-wide email went out at 10 a.m., announcing my new position and outlining my expanded responsibilities. My inbox immediately flooded with congratulations, questions, and meeting requests. Peter stopped by my desk, looking somewhat sheepish. So, you'll be my boss now? Technically, yes, I confirmed. Is that going to be a problem? He shook his head quickly. No, it's great. You've always been the one who actually knows what's happening anyway. Throughout the day, colleagues who had barely acknowledged me previously suddenly found reasons to introduce themselves. Administrative assistants who had always been kind to me now smiled with a hint of conspiracy. They understood better than anyone how invisible work kept the company running. Elaine avoided me until late afternoon, when she appeared at my desk with a folder. The quarterly strategy document, she said stiffly. Since operational planning now falls under your purview, you'll need to present this at the executive meeting tomorrow. I accepted the folder. Thank you, I'll review it tonight. She turned to leave, then hesitated. For what it's worth, I didn't recommend against your promotion because I thought you were incapable. I did it because I couldn't afford to lose you from my team. It was perhaps the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. That's the fundamental problem, isn't it? I replied. Good managers develop their people even when it means letting them move on. She nodded once, sharply, and walked away. That evening, I stayed late reorganizing my workspace for my new role. Byron stopped by on his way out. Still here? I thought you'd be celebrating. I smiled. I'll celebrate this weekend. Right now, I'm planning. Planning what? How to make sure no one else in this company is overlooked the way I was. I handed him a document I'd been working on. This is my proposed structure for the new department, including training programs to identify internal talent and systematically develop it. He flipped through the pages, eyebrows rising. You developed all this today? No, I admitted. I've been refining it for about 2 years. I just never had the authority to implement it. Byron shook his head, looking impressed. Remind me never to underestimate you, Amelia. That's the plan, I replied with a smile. 3 months later, the transformation was well underway. My new team included a brilliant systems analyst who had been buried in IT support and a process developer who had been miscast as an administrative assistant. Together, we streamlined operations across 4 departments, reducing overtime by 40% while increasing productivity metrics. Elaine and I developed a professional working relationship. It wasn't friendly exactly, but it was respectful. She excelled at client-facing interactions, once freed from operational details she had never fully grasped. In an unexpected development, the division's employee satisfaction scores improved dramatically. The Ellison contract expanded to include 2 additional service lines, specifically requesting my new team's involvement in the implementation. Their CEO personally called Byron to commend the company's remarkable turnaround in operational excellence. On a Friday afternoon, 6 months after my non-promotion, I left the office at 5 p.m., a habit I had maintained despite my increased responsibilities. Elena was waiting when I got home, homework spread across the kitchen table. How was work, Mom? She asked, looking up from her math problems. Productive, I replied, setting down my laptop bag. The new training program launched today. 25 employees will get development opportunities they wouldn't have had before. Like you didn't get? Children see more than we realize. Yes, exactly like that. She considered this for a moment. That's a nice way to fix things. Instead of getting mad, you're making it better for other people. I smiled, recognizing the wisdom in her observation. Sometimes the best response to being undervalued isn't anger. It's demonstrating your true worth so clearly that it can never be questioned again. That evening, as Elena slept and I reviewed presentations for Monday's executive meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from Byron. Board approved your promotion to VP level, effective next month. Unanimous vote. Elaine actually gave the strongest recommendation. Congratulations. I set the phone down, a sense of satisfaction washing over me. This wasn't about winning or revenge. It was about finally being seen, truly seen, for what I had always been capable of doing. The corner office with my name on the door was nice, but it wasn't the victory. The victory was changing a system that had failed not just me, but countless others whose quiet competence went unrecognized. The victory was creating paths for others to rise without having to become invisible first. Sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated isn't proving others wrong. It's creating a world where talent can no longer be ignored, no matter how quietly it performs. If you've ever felt invisible in your workplace, despite carrying more than your share, I hope my story gives you courage. The skills that make you indispensable are the same ones that qualify you for leadership. Don't wait for others to recognize your value. Demonstrate it so clearly that denying it becomes impossible. And if you found something valuable in this story, please like and subscribe for more strategies on transforming workplace dynamics. Remember, your worth isn't determined by others' inability to see it. It's defined by your impact, whether acknowledged or not.
My girlfriend blocked me on everything after I tried to talk about our future. I couldn't reply, so I emailed her landlord and withdrew as the guarantor on her lease. She was left frantically calling me after receiving an eviction notice. I'm Finn, 28, working as an architect making $72,000 a year. Comfortable but not rich. Then there's Maya, my ex-girlfriend of 3 years who I genuinely thought I'd marry. Maya, 26, is a social media influencer, which sounds glamorous until you realize she makes maybe $500 to $1,200 a month posting outfit photos and dancing on TikTok. Zero stability whatsoever. But I was stupidly, blindly in love. We planned everything. Our dream wedding with string lights and exposed beams, future kids named Lily and Rose, honeymoon in Italy, even named our future Pomeranian Gucci. Yes, after the luxury brand. First red flag I completely missed. Love makes you an idiot. And I was valedictorian of Idiot University. 8 months ago, Maya found the apartment. She became psychotically obsessed. I'm talking 47 photos sent in one afternoon. Weeks of talking about nothing else. Every conversation circling back to this trendy downtown one-bedroom with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. Pure Instagram influencer heaven. The problem? Money. Always money with Maya. The landlord required proof of income at 3 times the monthly rent. Maya made maybe half that on her best months, sometimes almost nothing. When her application got rejected, she had a 3-day meltdown, hysterical crying, refusing to eat, staying in bed, the full manipulative theatrical production. This was my dream apartment. My career depends on the perfect content space. I'll never find anything this perfect again. So I did the stupidest thing of my 28 years. I offered to be her guarantor. Didn't even hesitate, just volunteered myself like a complete doormat with zero self-preservation instincts. I had steady income, 780 credit score, seemed like no big deal. I thought I was being the perfect supportive boyfriend. Boy, was I catastrophically wrong. The rent was $1,850 monthly. I paid the entire $3,200 security deposit up front, calling it an early birthday present, because apparently I have zero self-respect. She cried happy tears, telling me I was the best boyfriend ever. Then came furnishing this place to match her aesthetic vision. $4,500 in furniture and decor from West Elm, CB2, Pottery Barn, Anthropology. Constant shopping links at all hours. During work meetings, at midnight, first thing in the morning. Babe, we need this coffee table or the whole vibe is ruined. Like a pushover, I bought everything without thinking twice. I assembled every piece of furniture myself because Maya doesn't do manual labor. It wasn't part of her brand image. 3 weekends straight building furniture until my hands had blisters and my back was killing me. I hung floating shelves that had to be perfectly level within a millimeter, or she'd make me redo everything. Installed a $400 professional ring light setup. Spent an entire Saturday painting her bathroom this specific shade of millennial pink from some influencer's Instagram. The apartment basically became my second home, despite not being on the lease. My toothbrush in the bathroom, half my wardrobe in her closet, my food in the fridge. Every weekend there. I fixed everything. Wi-Fi router, clogged drains, garbage disposal, installed a new deadbolt, fixed drywall holes, replaced light fixtures. All told, nearly $9,000 spent. Security deposit, furniture, decor, supplies, everything she desperately needed for her content creation. And here's the kicker. Maya never once offered to pay me back. Not even a token gesture. Just, thank you, baby. You're the best. Followed by immediately asking what else we should buy. The red flags were everywhere. Giant neon warning signs I chose to ignore because I thought we were building our future together. I thought every dollar was an investment in our relationship. I was completely naive and blind to what was really happening. 3 weeks ago, I made what turned out to be a catastrophic, huge mistake. I brought up the simple, logical idea of us officially living together properly, like normal committed couples do, after dating seriously for multiple years. My own lease at my apartment was ending in roughly 2 months, and it seemed like the completely logical next step in our relationship progression. We were practically living together anyway at that point. I was spending 5 or 6 nights absolutely every single week at her place. I had basically moved half my belongings there already. We were essentially doing life together. It just made perfect sense to make it official and actually properly combine our lives together, like adults in a committed, serious relationship heading toward marriage. We were sitting at this super trendy, overpriced brunch spot that she absolutely loved and constantly posted about on Instagram, that I paid the full $67 bill for, without her even offering to split, like always. Avocado toast and fancy overpriced lattes with pretty latte art, and I very casually brought the topic up in conversation. I really wasn't being pushy or demanding or giving her an ultimatum at all, just mentioning it as something important we should probably start thinking about and seriously discussing for our future. Hey babe, so I was thinking since my lease is almost up in like 2 months, maybe we should start seriously looking at nice two-bedroom places together for both of us. Or alternatively, I could just officially move in with you here, and we could split the rent 50-50 to make it fair. We could finally make things official and really properly start our life together as a team. Her entire face changed instantly and dramatically, like someone had physically slapped her hard across the face without warning. Her warm, genuine smile completely disappeared in a split second and was replaced with this cold, hard, almost angry expression I had genuinely never seen on her face before in our entire 3 years together. Why would we even need 2 bedrooms for anything? She asked, and her voice had this sharp, cutting edge to it that immediately made my stomach drop with anxiety and dread. I don't really know exactly, maybe 1 bedroom for like a home office since we both work from home sometimes, or a guest room for when our families come visit us from out of town, or just having more space in general for both of us to spread out and be comfortable and have our own areas. This is my apartment, she said super firmly and coldly, really emphasizing and drawing out the word my like she was staking her claim. I absolutely don't want to change literally anything about it at all whatsoever. I've worked so incredibly hard to make it completely perfect for my brand image and aesthetic vision, and I definitely can't afford to split rent with you anyway. You know perfectly well my income isn't nearly stable or reliable enough for that kind of major financial commitment and responsibility. I was genuinely confused and hurt at this point, my emotions all jumbled. But I'm already paying for so much of everything here, the furniture, and she immediately cut me off sharply before I could finish. That's completely different, Finn. That's you being supportive and helpful with my dreams and my career development and growth. This is my personal space, and I'm not ready to officially share it with anyone else right now. I need my own independent place for my personal independence and my content creation workflow and process. The conversation got really uncomfortable and tense really fast, and she very abruptly changed the subject to some random influencer drama she'd seen on social media that morning. I immediately dropped the whole topic because I've honestly never been particularly good with confrontation or conflict in relationships, and I didn't want to completely ruin our nice brunch date together. But something felt really, really off deep in my gut. There was this heavy knot of anxiety sitting in my stomach that absolutely wouldn't go away no matter what I did. Over the next several days, Maya became increasingly distant, cold, and dismissive toward me in ways she'd never been before. Her text messages went from long, loving paragraphs with emojis to super short one-word responses like K and yeah and busy RN. She was constantly claiming to be super busy with content creation, or in important meetings with potential brand sponsors, whenever I tried to make any plans to see her or even just talk on the phone. By Friday afternoon, I was getting genuinely worried and anxious that something was seriously wrong with her or with us. I tried calling her multiple times throughout the day. She declined every single call immediately without even letting it ring. I sent her thoughtful, caring text messages asking if everything was okay and if I'd done something wrong, left on read for many hours before getting super dismissive, brief one-word responses that didn't answer my questions. Saturday morning, I checked Instagram out of pure habit and routine, just mindlessly scrolling through my feed like I did every morning, and my stomach absolutely dropped straight to the floor. Her profile picture was completely gone. The little circle that should have had her smiling face was just blank, gray, empty space. I clicked on it with shaking hands and got that awful dreaded user not found error message that makes your heart sink. My heart started racing and pounding hard in my chest. I was completely blocked without warning or explanation. I frantically checked TikTok with growing panic. Blocked there too. Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, literally every single social media platform we were connected on. She had systematically and deliberately blocked me on absolutely everything. She had completely and totally erased me from her entire digital life, like our 3-year relationship had never even existed or mattered. I started genuinely panicking and freaking out at this point, my mind racing. Like, what if something terrible and horrible had happened to her? What if she was seriously hurt or injured or in some kind of terrible danger and desperately needed help? What if she'd been in a bad car accident or something even worse? My mind was spiraling out of control with worst-case scenarios I couldn't stop imagining. I immediately drove over to the apartment as fast as I possibly could without getting pulled over, my hands literally shaking on the steering wheel and my heart pounding so hard in my chest I could hear it. When I pulled into the familiar parking lot, I immediately saw her car parked in her usual assigned spot, looking totally normal. The lights were clearly on inside the apartment, and I could distinctly hear music playing and people laughing loudly through the door. At least I knew she was physically alive and not hurt or in danger. I knocked firmly on the door with my knuckles. Absolutely no answer at all. I knocked again much harder this time, loud enough that I knew she could hear. Still completely nothing, just silence from inside followed by more muffled laughter. I could very clearly hear voices and laughter continuing inside like they were having some kind of party or get-together. I made a split-second decision and used my key, the exact same one she had specifically given me many months ago for emergencies only, and explicitly told me to keep just in case something ever happens and you need to check on me. This definitely felt like an emergency situation to me given the circumstances. The sight that greeted me when I pushed that door open is literally permanently burned into my brain forever, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. There was Maya sitting on my couch, the exact same one I had spent 4 grueling hours assembling with bleeding hands while she sat there scrolling on her phone not helping at all, with some random guy I'd never seen before. DEX, this wannabe SoundCloud rapper she had mentioned maybe once in passing months ago as a potential collab partner for her social media content. He had his arm draped super casually and intimately around her shoulders, and she was practically sitting directly in his lap, both of them looking super cozy and comfortable together and laughing at something on his phone screen. They looked exactly like a couple on a date. They both froze completely solid when they saw me standing there in the doorway. Just completely froze up like cartoon characters caught doing something bad, their eyes going super wide with shock. What the heck are you even doing here right now? Maya practically shrieked at me at the top of her lungs, jumping up from the couch so fast and forcefully that she almost fell over and twisted her ankle. You blocked me on literally every single platform without any warning or explanation, I said, and I could hear my own voice physically shaking with emotion and hurt. I was genuinely worried that something terrible had happened to you. I thought you might be seriously hurt or in danger. Who even is this guy? Dex stood up really slowly and deliberately, all 5'6" of him in those designer sneakers that probably cost well over $800 or more. Yo, who even is this random person showing up here? Maya, I seriously thought you told me you were completely single and available? My heart completely shattered into approximately 1,000,000 tiny pieces right there in that doorway. The girl I had deeply loved for 3 whole years had apparently told this random stranger guy she was totally single and available. Like our entire relationship meant absolutely nothing at all to her. We really need to talk about this situation. Right now. Alone, please, I managed to say to Maya, desperately fighting back the tears that were forming in my eyes. No, I definitely think you need to leave immediately, she said coldly. You absolutely can't just walk in here completely uninvited like some kind of crazy stalker person. I have a key. You personally gave me this key yourself. You explicitly told me to keep it for emergencies. Well, I want it back right this second. Put it down on the counter right now and get out of my apartment immediately. I was physically shaking, my entire body trembling with emotion. Are you seriously doing this to me right now? After literally everything we've been through together? Everything I've sacrificed and done for you? All the money I've spent helping you? Get out right now! She screamed at me at the absolute top of her lungs with pure rage. Like literally screamed so incredibly loud that I'm completely sure all the neighbors in nearby apartments definitely heard everything clearly. I put the key down on the counter with trembling, shaking hands and walked out. My vision completely blurry with tears streaming down my face. I sat in my car in that parking lot for probably an hour and a half at minimum, just crying uncontrollably and trying desperately to process what had just happened to my entire life and future. My 3-year relationship was apparently just completely over. Done. Finished. Destroyed in an instant. Like I had never meant anything at all to her, or mattered in her life. Then something really significant shifted inside me emotionally. The tears gradually stopped flowing, and this strange, cold clarity washed over me like ice water poured on my head. I felt my overwhelming sadness slowly transforming into something else entirely. Pure determination and resolve, and cold, calculated anger. If Maya wanted to play dirty, manipulative games like this with me, then absolutely fine. I could definitely play too, and I played strategic chess while she was playing simple checkers like a child. I drove straight home to my apartment, went directly to my laptop, and pulled up the lease agreement I had wisely saved to my computer hard drive. I'm naturally the type of person who saves every single important document methodically. Call it an architect thing if you want. We're extremely detail-oriented and organized by nature and training. I must have read through the guarantor section at least 15 or 20 times at minimum, making absolutely certain I understood every single word and legal clause and implication perfectly before taking any action. It clearly stated right there, in plain black and white legal language that couldn't be misinterpreted, that I could officially withdraw as the financial guarantor with simple written notice to the landlord. Once I formally withdrew my guarantee, Maya would have exactly 30 calendar days to provide a brand new guarantor who met all the strict income requirements and was approved by the landlord, or she would be legally required to vacate the premises immediately. Vacate the premises. Those 3 beautiful words. My hands were completely steady and calm as I carefully typed out the formal email with perfect professional language. No shaking whatsoever, no hesitation at all, just cold, calculated precision and determination. I was completely done being the nice, pushover, doormat guy who got walked all over and taken advantage of. Dear Mr. Chen, I am writing to formally notify you that I am officially withdrawing as the financial guarantor for the lease agreement located at Trans-Pacific Street address, Unit 4B, for tenant Maya Rodriguez, effective immediately as of today's date. As per Section 8.3 of the signed lease agreement, I fully understand this action initiates the mandatory 30-day period for the tenant to secure an alternative approved guarantor or vacate the premises. Thank you very much for your prompt attention to this urgent matter. Should you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to contact me directly at any time. Sincerely, Finn, my full legal name and all contact information. I carefully read it over 3 separate times, thoroughly checked for any possible errors or typos that might cause problems, and then confidently sent it at exactly 2:47 a.m. on a Sunday morning when I knew it would be waiting in his inbox first thing Monday. Then I systematically blocked Maya's phone number completely on my phone. Blocked her on Venmo and PayPal and Cash App and Zelle because I absolutely knew she would definitely try to reach out through financial payment apps eventually when she got desperate. I powered off my phone completely and went straight to bed, sleeping better and more peacefully than I had in weeks or possibly even months. The weekend that immediately followed was surprisingly peaceful, therapeutic, and cathartic for my mental health. I spent the entire time methodically deep cleaning my entire apartment from top to bottom and getting rid of every single thing that reminded me even slightly of Maya and our relationship. The matching couple's coffee mugs she had bought using my credit card without asking, thrown directly in the trash without hesitation. The framed photos of us together smiling at various events and trips, permanently deleted from my phone, computer, and cloud storage accounts. The spare expensive makeup and skincare products she always kept at my place in the bathroom, all went straight in the garbage. The oversized t-shirt she always wore to sleep in when she stayed overnights, gone to donation. I was systematically erasing her from my entire life, just like she had so cruelly tried to erase me from hers without warning. It felt incredibly cleansing, empowering, and liberating. Like I was finally taking back complete control of my own life after letting someone else dictate and control absolutely everything for so long. Monday afternoon, the landlord Mr. Chen processed my formal withdrawal email and sent Maya an official legal notice via certified mail about needing to secure a brand new approved guarantor within the required strict legal time frame or face eviction. That's when all absolute hell broke loose in the most spectacular and dramatic way I could have possibly imagined. My phone started absolutely exploding with constant calls from numbers I didn't recognize at all. 15 missed calls in approximately 20 minutes total. Then my personal email inbox went absolutely insane, with notifications pouring in constantly. The very first email from Maya had the dramatic subject line, "What did you do?" The body text read in all caps, "Are you literally insane right now? I just got an official legal notice from my landlord saying I need a completely new guarantor in exactly 30 days, or I'm getting evicted from my perfect apartment? You absolutely can't do this horrible thing to me. This is my apartment that I worked so incredibly hard for. You can't just take this away from me like this for no reason. Call me back right this second." About 10 minutes later, another absolutely frantic, panicked email arrived. My dad completely can't co-sign because he's totally bankrupt from his third messy divorce and his credit is completely ruined forever. My mom's credit is absolutely terrible from her severe shopping addiction and massive credit card debt she can't pay. You're literally trying to make me homeless? Over a stupid fight? Over being jealous of Dex hanging out with me as a friend? You're actually a completely psychotic person, and I can't believe I ever dated you. The complete and utter lack of any self-awareness whatsoever was almost impressively delusional and disconnected from reality. In her completely twisted, warped version of the situation and reality, she had done absolutely nothing wrong at all whatsoever. I was just being overdramatic and psychotic and jealous and controlling for having completely normal human feelings about being cheated on and completely disrespected and having my trust betrayed. Then I received a Facebook message from Dex. I genuinely have absolutely no idea how he even managed to find my personal profile, since we definitely weren't Facebook friends or connected in any way. Yo, this is really messed up and wrong, man. Maya's having a complete mental breakdown right now, literally crying hysterically and everything. You seriously can't just kick someone out of their home because you're jealous and bitter about her moving on with her life and finding happiness. That's literally financial abuse and controlling behavior, and you could get in serious trouble. Fix this horrible situation right now immediately, or I'm personally exposing you all over social media to everyone." To his incredibly impressive total of 847 followers? Oh no, I was absolutely terrified beyond belief. Obviously heavy sarcasm here. I made the conscious, deliberate decision not to respond to any of it whatsoever. Not a single message or email or call. Instead, I created a new organized folder in my email account labeled Evidence and Documentation and started systematically saving absolutely everything with meticulous detail. Screenshots with clear timestamps, copies of all emails with headers, phone call logs with dates and times, the whole works. I was building an absolutely ironclad case with undeniable evidence. Around 11 p.m. that night, Maya's manipulation strategy changed completely to a different approach. She left me a long voicemail message with this sweet, pleading, manipulative voice that I'd heard her use 1,000 times before when she wanted something. "Baby, please, I know you're hurt and confused and feeling betrayed, and I completely understand that, and I should have talked to you about Dex before anything happened between us at all. But we can totally work through this together as a couple. I absolutely know we can, if we just try. I love you so much. I love our home and everything we built together from nothing. Remember how perfect we made it together? Remember picking out every single piece of furniture? Please don't throw away 3 amazing years over one tiny stupid mistake that didn't mean anything. Call me back, please. I'm literally begging you with tears in my eyes." Our home. She actually had the nerve and audacity to call it our home in this manipulative message. The same apartment where she had explicitly and clearly told me was her personal space that she absolutely wasn't ready to share with me officially. The same apartment I apparently wasn't allowed to officially move into because it would somehow ruin her aesthetic or compromise her independence, or whatever ridiculous excuse she'd given me at brunch. The manipulation was so transparent and obvious, it was almost comical and funny to me. When the crying and begging manipulation strategy didn't work at all to get any response from me, Maya and Dex made the calculated decision to try turning all our mutual friends against me using lies and manipulation. It's a classic textbook manipulation tactic that toxic people love to use. My good friend Jasmine texted me first thing in the morning, "Hey Finn, I really don't want to get in the middle of your relationship drama at all." But Maya called me absolutely sobbing and crying for like an hour straight last night. She said you're trying to get her evicted and make her homeless because you're jealous of her new boyfriend Dex. That seems really extreme, and honestly kind of toxic and abusive behavior. I took a deep breath to stay calm, carefully thought about my response, and sent back a completely factual response without any emotion. "Hey Jazz, I really appreciate you reaching out to check on things, but here's the actual real situation that Maya isn't telling you. I went to check on Maya after she blocked me on every single platform without any explanation whatsoever, and I found her with another guy on the couch in the apartment I've been financially supporting for 8 months. I simply removed myself from a legal and financial obligation I'm no longer comfortable with given the circumstances. That's the complete story and nothing more." Jasmine replied back within just a few minutes. "Oh my god, I had no idea about any of that context. She absolutely didn't mention the part about blocking you everywhere first, or that she was cheating on you with someone, or that you've been paying for everything in her apartment this whole time. I'm so sorry, Finn, that's absolutely horrible what she did to you." This exact same conversation happened with approximately 8 different mutual friends over the next several days. Maya was actively going around telling absolutely everyone that I was trying to make her homeless just from jealousy and being bitter, while very conveniently leaving out the tiny important detail that she had cheated on me and betrayed my trust completely. Then, Maya must have suddenly realized that literally all the furniture in the entire apartment actually belonged to me legally based on receipts and documentation. She sent me this absolutely insane, unhinged email that showed how delusional she really was. "Okay, Finn, since you're being incredibly petty and vindictive about this whole situation, we really need to seriously discuss the apartment contents and who gets what. I picked out the entire aesthetic for everything, so it only makes sense that I should definitely keep the main important pieces. The couch is literally perfect for my content shoots and matches my brand colors exactly. You absolutely can't just take that from me. Same exact thing with the bed frame, the dining set, and those expensive curtains I spent weeks carefully choosing. You can have the bookshelf and maybe the nightstands if you really desperately need them, I guess. Also, you definitely owe me exactly $380 for utilities and Wi-Fi from the last 2 months since you used them whenever you were here at my place." The sheer audacity and entitlement. She genuinely wanted to keep thousands and thousands of dollars worth of my furniture that I paid for. And she wanted me to pay her money? I spent the next hour creating the single most detailed organized spreadsheet of my entire life. Every single item listed, exact purchase date, exact price paid, direct link to the order confirmation email or receipt scan. Total value calculation, $9,650 in furniture and household items. Security deposit, $3,200 paid entirely by me with clear bank records. I crafted the most professional email response possible. "Maya, please find attached comprehensive documentation of my personal property currently located at the apartment. As you can clearly see from all the receipts, everything listed belongs solely to me. I will be retrieving all of my belongings this coming Saturday between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. I will have someone with me to assist with moving everything. Regarding the $3,200 security deposit that I paid in full, I will be formally requesting its return directly from Mr. Chen at the conclusion of your tenancy. I very strongly suggest you cooperate fully to make this process as smooth and drama-free as possible. As for the $380 in utilities you mentioned, please consider it my final gift to you." Dex responded to my professional email within literally 2 minutes. "Yo, this is absolutely sick, dude. You're really seriously gonna take her bed away? What's she supposed to sleep on? The floor? And that security deposit was clearly a gift to her. You absolutely can't legally take back gifts. That's not how the law works at all. We're definitely keeping everything, and there's literally nothing you can do about it. Try to take it and see what happens to you. See what happens to me? Was that supposed to be some kind of physical threat? Cool and noted. I saved that threatening email too for my evidence folder." Saturday morning finally arrived, and I showed up at the apartment at exactly 11 a.m. sharp with my buddy from the gym, who I trust completely, and his large pickup truck. Maya and Dex were both there already waiting for me, physically blocking the doorway like some kind of rejected amateur security team. Maya was dressed up all cute and attractive, makeup done absolutely perfectly, clearly thinking she could somehow seduce or manipulate me into changing my mind about taking my property. "Baby, please. Can we please just talk about this like actual rational adults? There absolutely has to be some kind of compromise here that works for everyone. I am being a rational adult right now. I'm here to collect my personal property that belongs to me. But what am I supposed to sleep on? Sit on? Eat at? You're literally taking everything from me. You should have seriously thought about those consequences before you made the decision to cheat on me with decks on the couch I bought with my own hard-earned money. Her face immediately turned bright red with embarrassment and anger. It's not even like that between us. We haven't even done anything yet. That's not the point here. You gave me all these things as gifts for my birthday and holidays. Dex stepped forward, trying his best to look tough and intimidating. Yo, man, she's absolutely right about this. You really can't just... My buddy from the gym, who's 6'4" and legitimately built like he literally lives at the gym lifting weights, stepped up confidently next to me. Actually, yes, he absolutely can take his property. Everything's properly documented with receipts and proof of purchase. Are you planning to physically stop us? Because we can easily call for a civil standby right now if needed. Your choice entirely. The simple mention of potentially getting authorities involved made them both immediately freeze up with fear. Maya started crying, though I could easily tell it was completely fake crocodile tears because I'd seen her real genuine tears before many times. This is so cruel and heartless. How can you do this to someone you claim to love? I pushed past them both firmly. I need you both to move out of my way, right now. For the next 3.5 hours straight, my buddy and I systematically dismantled and loaded every single thing I had purchased with my own money. The expensive couch, the bed frame, the mattress, the dining table and matching chairs, the TV and entertainment center unit, the decorative mirrors, the curtain rods with those expensive velvet curtains, even the basic hand towels from Target that cost like $3. Maya kept crying fake tears and filming us on her phone vertically. I'm posting this everywhere online. Everyone's going to see how abusive and controlling you are. Go right ahead. Make absolutely sure you mention the part about you cheating on me too. Dex just stood there looking completely useless and pathetic. At one point, he actually tried to grab the TV as we were carefully carrying it out, and my buddy literally just picked him up by his arms and physically moved him aside like a piece of lightweight furniture. When we were completely finished loading everything, the apartment was essentially totally empty except for Maya's clothes and her ring light photography setup. It looked absolutely pathetic and sad. Loading the very last box into the truck, Maya screamed after us from the doorway with pure rage, "You'll regret this for the rest of your life! Dex is going to take care of me now! I don't need anything from you ever again!" Those exact words would come back to haunt her very soon. Next day, I sent a certified letter requiring signature to Mr. Chen, formally requesting that my security deposit be returned directly to me. I included copies of bank statements, clearly proving I paid the full amount, email correspondence about the apartment, detailed timeline of events with dates. Through Jasmine, I heard that Maya was completely unable to find a new guarantor willing to take the financial risk. Her dad was totally bankrupt from multiple divorces. Her mom had terrible credit from shopping addiction. None of her friends would take on that kind of liability. Dex's credit score was apparently somewhere around 487. He literally couldn't even get approved for a basic phone plan, let alone qualify as a guarantor for an $1,850 per month apartment. With absolutely no other options available, Maya was legally forced to break the lease and move out completely. Dex's apartment that he'd been bragging about to everyone turned out to be a single basement room in his mother's house. One room, shared bathroom upstairs. No kitchen access at all. He was 27 years old, still living with his mom. But karma absolutely wasn't done with them yet. Not even close to being done. Exactly 2 months later, my phone rang from an unknown number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment and instincts, I answered it anyway. Maya's voice. Really truly crying this time. Not fake tears. "Finn, please. I'm literally begging you. I desperately need your help. How did you even get this number? Please just listen to me for 1 minute. Dex, he's not who I thought he was at all. He doesn't have any money. He doesn't have anything. I'm literally living in his mother's basement in a room that smells like actual mold and has visible water damage on the ceiling. He got fired from his studio job, which was actually just him recording terrible music in some random guy's garage for free. I have absolutely nothing left, Finn. No apartment, no furniture, no savings. My Instagram engagement completely tanked because I can't shoot quality content anywhere decent. All my brand sponsors dropped me. I'm making maybe $200 a month now. I messed up so badly. I stayed completely silent. I desperately need money. A loan. $5,000? I swear I'll pay you back. I'm getting kicked out of his mom's house because I can't even afford $400 rent. Please, you're my only option." The audacity was impressive. You want $5,000 from me? Yes! I'll sign anything! I breathed slowly. Remember screaming that Dex would take care of you? Silence. Remember calling me psychotic? When you tried keeping my furniture? I'm sorry, I was stupid. You were incredibly stupid. Not my problem anymore. Please, I'll be homeless. Actions have consequences. But, lose this number. I hung up and blocked it immediately. 3 days later, Dex LinkedIn messaged me. Hey man, Maya's struggling. Could you loan her cash? I would, but I'm between opportunities. I replied, I make good money. That's why I'm not giving it to cheaters. Blocked. Later heard Maya's sponsors all dropped her. Dex's mom kicked them out. They're couch surfing, relationship falling apart. Meanwhile, I got $2,890 from the landlord. He deducted $310 for cleaning and wall repairs. I'm thriving now. New apartment I love. Dating someone with her own career, apartment, furniture. Taking things slow and healthy. Sometimes I think about Maya in that moldy basement. I feel nothing. She made her choices. Now she lives with them. I learned an expensive lesson about boundaries. The $9,000 was tuition. Worth every penny watching karma work. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.
My girlfriend said she wasn't in love with me anymore but wanted to keep living together, so I became the perfect roommate and stopped doing everything for her until she realized what she lost and begged me to take her back, but I had already found someone better. I'm Jake, 28M, and I've been with my girlfriend Belinda, 26F, for 3 years. We moved in together about 18 months ago after she lost her job at a marketing firm. I work as a software engineer at a tech company downtown, and I make decent money. Belinda has been doing freelance graphic design work since then, but it's pretty inconsistent income. Let me give you some background about our relationship. When we first started dating, Belinda was this incredibly independent woman. She had her own apartment, paid all her bills, and never asked me for anything. That's actually what attracted me to her initially. She seemed like she had her life together. But things changed gradually after she moved in. At first, she was contributing to rent and utilities from her savings. Then her freelance work started drying up around the time COVID hit. I told her not to worry about it and that I could cover everything until she got back on her feet. What I thought would be a temporary arrangement turned into something permanent. I started taking care of everything. I paid the rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance for both our cars, and even her phone bill. I added her to my family plan because it was cheaper than her individual plan. I handled all the household maintenance, fixed things when they broke, did most of the cleaning, and managed our social calendar. When we went out with friends, I picked up the tab. When we went on vacation, I paid for flights, hotels, and meals. Belinda seemed grateful at first. She would thank me and promise things would change once her career picked up. But as months passed, she stopped mentioning it. She started acting like this was just how things worked in our relationship. She would ask me to book dinner reservations for her and her friends. She expected me to drive her places when her car was acting up. She would make plans for us without consulting me, assuming I would handle the logistics and expenses. The physical side of our relationship was good. We were intimate regularly, and she seemed happy. She would tell me she loved me, we would cuddle while watching TV, and everything appeared normal from the outside. Her friends liked me, and my friends liked her. We talked about moving to a bigger place next year and maybe getting a dog. 3 weeks ago, we were sitting on the couch watching some reality show about people renovating houses. I was getting ready for bed because I had an early meeting the next morning. I leaned over to kiss her goodnight like I always do. She pulled back and gave me this strange look. She picked up the remote, muted the TV, and turned to face me directly. She said she needed to tell me something important. She said she liked me as a person and enjoyed living with me, but she wasn't in love with me anymore. She said she hadn't been in love with me for months, maybe longer. She said she wanted to be honest because she respected me too much to keep pretending. I asked her what she wanted to do about our living situation and our relationship. She said she hoped we could continue living together as friends. She said we worked well as roommates and there was no reason to mess up a good thing. She said she valued our friendship and didn't want to lose that by making things complicated. I told her I needed to think about it. I went to the bedroom and lay down. About 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Belinda was in a group chat with her 3 closest friends, and I had access to it because we sometimes used the shared tablet to text when our phones were dead. I could see she was telling them about our conversation. I watched the messages pop up on the screen. Her friends were telling her how brave and mature she was for being honest. They said it showed how much she cared about me, that she didn't want to hurt me by lying. They said lots of people stay in relationships for convenience, but it takes courage to have the hard conversations. I realized something while reading those messages. Belinda wasn't being brave or honest. She was being practical. She had figured out a way to keep all the benefits of our relationship without any of the obligations that come with being in love with someone. She wanted to keep living in the apartment I pay for. She wanted to keep the financial security I provide. She wanted to keep the emotional support and companionship. She just didn't want to feel guilty about not loving me back anymore. The next morning, I told her I was fine with being roommates. She seemed relieved and hugged me. She said she was so glad I understood and that this would be better for both of us in the long run. That's when I decided to become the perfect roommate. Not boyfriend. Roommate. I stopped making coffee for her in the morning. I had always made a full pot and left her mug on the counter next to it. Now I make exactly 1 cup in my travel mug and take it to work with me. I stopped doing her laundry. I had always thrown her clothes in with mine when I was doing a load. Now I only wash my own stuff. I stopped buying her favorite foods when I went grocery shopping. I had always picked up the specific brand of yogurt she likes and the expensive granola she eats for breakfast. Now I buy exactly what I need for myself and nothing extra. When she asked me to book a dinner reservation for her and her girlfriends last week, I told her I was busy that evening. I suggested she call the restaurant directly since they usually have availability if you call ahead. When her car started making that grinding noise again, she mentioned it to me while I was working on my laptop. I told her that sounded frustrating and suggested she get a few quotes from mechanics in the area. I said Yelp usually has good reviews for local auto shops. She keeps looking at me like she's waiting for me to do something. She leaves dishes in the sink longer than usual, probably expecting me to wash them like I used to. I just wash my own dishes and leave hers where they are. She's been playing sad music in the living room and sighing loudly when I'm nearby. Yesterday she asked if I wanted to watch a movie with her, and I said I was planning to go to the gym. I can see her getting more frustrated every day, but I don't understand why. I'm giving her exactly what she asked for. We're roommates now. I treat her the same way I would treat any roommate, with basic politeness and respect, but without the extras that come from being in love with someone. Her phone got shut off yesterday because I removed my card from her family plan. She came to me in a panic asking what happened. I explained that since we're not really a family anymore, it made sense for her to have her own phone plan. I offered to help her set up service with Verizon or T-Mobile. I'm not trying to be mean or get revenge. I'm just being logical. She made it clear that our romantic relationship is over, so I'm adjusting my behavior to match that reality. I don't do extra things for roommates that I would only do for someone I'm in love with. The lease on our apartment is up in 2 months, and I'm not planning to renew it. I've been looking at 1-bedroom places closer to my office. Belinda doesn't know yet because she hasn't asked, and roommates don't typically discuss their long-term housing plans unless it directly affects the other person. Am I handling this wrong? Should I be doing more to try to work things out? I feel like I'm being reasonable, but maybe I'm missing something. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. A lot of people asked for an update, so here it is. Things have gotten more interesting since I last wrote. Belinda's frustration has turned into something closer to panic, and I think she's starting to understand the full implications of what she asked for. Let me start with what happened on her birthday last week. Belinda turned 27 on Tuesday. In the past, I would plan something special for her birthday. 2 years ago, I surprised her with a weekend trip to Napa Valley. Last year, I organized a dinner party with all her friends at that expensive Italian place she loves. I would typically spend weeks planning, make reservations, coordinate with her friends, and handle all the details. This year, I wished her happy birthday in the morning and asked if she had any fun plans for the day. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. She said she thought we might do something together to celebrate. I told her that sounded nice and asked what she had in mind. She said she hadn't made any specific plans because she assumed I would handle it like I always did. I reminded her that planning birthday celebrations is typically something boyfriends do for their girlfriends, or something people do for themselves. Since we're roommates now, I figured she would want to celebrate with her actual friends rather than her roommate. She stared at me for a long moment, then said she would figure something out. She spent most of the day texting people, trying to organize something last minute. Most of her friends were busy because it was a Tuesday night, and she hadn't given them advance notice. She ended up ordering Chinese food and eating it alone while watching Netflix. I was in the office working on a project that was due the next morning. The financial reality has been hitting her harder than I expected. Besides the phone bill situation I mentioned before, there have been several other wake-up calls. Her car registration was due last month. I had always handled that for both of us because I'm organized about paperwork and deadlines. She didn't realize it was her responsibility now until she got pulled over for expired tags. The ticket was $250, plus she had to pay late fees for the registration renewal. Our car insurance was up for renewal, and I removed her from my policy. She had to get her own insurance, which cost significantly more than the family discount rate she was getting on my plan. She called me at work asking why her insurance card wasn't working when she tried to show it to the police officer during the traffic stop. She's been asking me to drive her places because her car is still making noise and she's nervous about driving it. Last Saturday, she asked me to take her to Target because she needed to pick up some things and didn't trust her car for the 20-minute drive. I told her I had plans to go hiking with my friend Mike, but I could drop her off at Target on my way if she wanted. She asked how she was supposed to get home, and I suggested she could call an Uber or take the bus. The bus stop is right outside Target, and our apartment is on the direct route. She ended up taking the bus home, which took over an hour because she had to wait 30 minutes for the next bus and then make 2 transfers. She was carrying heavy bags and looked exhausted when she got back. I think she's starting to realize how much I was handling behind the scenes. I used to take care of all the little things that make life easier. Now she has to figure out everything herself, and she's discovering that being an adult requires a lot more planning and money than she remembered. Her freelance work has picked up a little bit, but not enough to cover all her new expenses. She got a small project designing a logo for a local restaurant, which paid $800. But between her new phone bill, car insurance, the traffic ticket, and having to buy her own groceries, that money disappeared quickly. She's been eating a lot of pasta and canned soup lately because those are some of the cheapest things she can find. I continue to buy my normal groceries, including fresh vegetables, good meat, and the organic stuff I like. I keep it all on my designated shelves in the refrigerator and pantry. Last weekend, she asked if she could borrow some of my food because she was running low on groceries and wouldn't get paid for her latest project until the following week. I told her she was welcome to anything in the shared sections, like salt, pepper, and basic condiments, but the rest was my personal food. She asked if I could spot her some money for groceries, and she would pay me back when her client paid her. I explained that lending money to roommates can make things awkward, especially when there's no clear timeline for repayment. I suggested she could ask her friends or family for help, or maybe pick up some extra freelance work. The social dynamics have been interesting too. Belinda's friends have stopped coming over as much as they used to. I think they feel awkward around me now that they know we're not actually dating anymore. When they do come over, they whisper a lot and keep looking at me like they're trying to figure out what I'm thinking. 2 of her friends, Patty and Amanda, came over last Thursday night. They were clearly there to give Belinda emotional support and probably to talk about me. I said hello when they arrived, then went to my office to work. I could hear them talking quietly in the living room for about 2 hours. When they were leaving, Patty stopped by my office door and asked if she could talk to me for a minute. She said Belinda was going through a hard time and asked if there was any way we could work things out. She said Belinda really cares about me and maybe just got scared about the commitment. I told Patty I appreciated her concern, but Belinda had been very clear about not being in love with me anymore. I said I was respecting Belinda's honesty and trying to be a good friend by not putting pressure on her to change her feelings. Patty looked frustrated and said that wasn't what she meant. She said sometimes people say things they don't really mean when they're stressed or confused. I asked Patty if she thought Belinda was lying when she said she wasn't in love with me. Patty didn't have a good answer for that. The conversation with Patty made me realize that Belinda's friends are trying to fix something that Belinda herself said was broken. They're treating this like a temporary relationship problem instead of the permanent change in status that Belinda requested. I've been going out more in the evenings. I joined a hiking group that meets on weekends, and I've been going to the gym consistently. I signed up for a cooking class on Thursday nights, which is something I always wanted to try but never had time for when I was busy managing our relationship. Belinda has been home alone most evenings now. She used to have plans with friends several nights a week, but that seems to have dropped off. I'm not sure if it's because she can't afford to go out as much, or if her friends are less available now that she doesn't have a boyfriend to help coordinate group activities. I found an apartment I really like. It's a 1-bedroom place about 15 minutes closer to my office, with a great kitchen and a small balcony. The rent is actually less than what I'm paying now because I won't be splitting a 2-bedroom. I haven't signed anything yet because I want to give Belinda enough notice to figure out her own housing situation. She still hasn't asked me about the lease renewal, even though it's coming up in 6 weeks. I wonder if she's assuming I'll just handle it like I used to handle everything else. Update 2: The situation has escalated significantly since my last update. Belinda is starting to understand that this isn't a phase I'm going through, and her attempts to fix things have become more desperate. 3 weeks ago, she tried a different approach. She came home from having drinks with her friends and was wearing one of my old college t-shirts that she used to sleep in when we were dating. She sat on the edge of the bed while I was reading and started crying. She said she missed me and missed what we used to have together. She said she made a mistake and wanted to go back to how things were before. I put my book down and asked her what specifically she missed. She said she missed feeling close to someone and having someone who cared about her. I told her it sounded like she was going through a difficult time, and suggested she might benefit from talking to a counselor. I said there are sliding scale therapy options if cost was a concern, or she could try some of the mental health apps that offer affordable counseling. She stared at me like I had slapped her. She asked if I was seriously recommending therapy instead of talking about our relationship. I said I wasn't qualified to help her work through her feelings about missing intimacy and emotional connection. A professional would be much better equipped to help her figure out what she really wanted. She got up and left the room without saying anything else. The next morning, she acted like the conversation never happened. But I could tell she was studying my behavior more carefully, like she was trying to find cracks in my roommate approach. The lease situation finally came to a head last week. Our landlord sent the renewal notice, and I left it on the kitchen counter for Belinda to see. She found it when she got home from a freelance meeting. She asked me if we were going to renew the lease. I told her I had decided not to renew, and that I had already signed a lease on a different place starting next month. She asked where that left her. I said she would need to decide whether she wanted to take over this lease by herself or find somewhere else to live. I offered to ask our landlord if he would be willing to remove my name from the lease if she wanted to stay. That's when she completely lost it. She started yelling that I was abandoning her and leaving her with no way to afford the rent on her own. She said I was being cruel and punishing her for being honest about her feelings. I stayed calm and reminded her that roommates don't typically sign long-term leases together unless they've specifically discussed it and agreed on terms. I said I had assumed she would want the freedom to make her own housing decisions as an independent adult. She said I knew she couldn't afford this place on her own, and that I was deliberately putting her in an impossible situation. I pointed out that she had never asked me about my plans for the lease renewal, even though she had 6 weeks to bring it up. I said if she had asked, we could have had this conversation much earlier and she would have had more time to explore her options. She demanded to know why I was doing this to her. She said I was being vindictive and trying to hurt her because she didn't love me the way I wanted her to. I told her I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I said she had made it clear that she wanted to be friends instead of romantic partners, and I was trying to respect that by not making assumptions about our future living arrangements. She asked what she was supposed to do now. I suggested she could look for roommates, or maybe move back in with her parents temporarily while she figured things out. I said her friend Patty had mentioned that she was looking for someone to split rent on a 2-bedroom apartment. She said moving back in with her parents would be humiliating, and that Patty's apartment was in a bad neighborhood she didn't want to live in. I said those were definitely challenging options, but that I was confident she would figure something out. I reminded her that she had been living independently before we moved in together, so she had experience managing her own housing. She said that was different because she had a steady job then, and that I knew her financial situation was more complicated now. I agreed that her financial situation was more challenging, but said that was exactly why it made sense for her to have more control over her living expenses instead of depending on someone else to make those decisions for her. The conversation ended with her storming out of the apartment. She came back several hours later and didn't speak to me for 3 days. During those 3 days, I could hear her on the phone constantly, presumably trying to figure out her living situation. She had several long conversations with her parents, which sounded tense based on the tone of her voice coming from her bedroom. She also had what sounded like a difficult conversation with Patty about the roommate situation. I gathered from the parts I overheard that Patty's timeline didn't match up with Belinda's needs. On Thursday, she asked if we could talk. She had clearly been crying, and she looked exhausted. She said she had been thinking about everything, and she realized she might have been taking me for granted. She said she wanted to work on rebuilding our relationship and earning back my trust. I asked her what she meant by rebuilding our relationship. She said she wanted us to be a couple again. She said she had been confused before, but now she understood what she really wanted. I asked her what had changed since our conversation 6 weeks ago when she told me she wasn't in love with me. She said she had been scared of commitment and had convinced herself she didn't have strong feelings for me. She said living as friends had made her realize how much she actually cared about me. I said that was interesting, and asked when exactly she had realized she was in love with me again. She said it had been building over the past few weeks, but it became clear when she thought about me moving out. I said the timing seemed convenient, given that she had just discovered she couldn't afford to live in our current apartment without me. She got defensive and said money had nothing to do with it. She said she genuinely missed being close to me and wanted to give our relationship another try. I told her I appreciated her honesty, but I wasn't interested in dating her again. She asked why not, and I explained that she had already told me she wasn't in love with me. I said I believed her when she said that, and I didn't think people's feelings changed that dramatically in just 6 weeks. She insisted her feelings were real and asked what she could do to prove it to me. I said there was nothing she could do, because I was no longer in love with her either. That wasn't entirely true when I said it, but it became true while I was saying it. Something shifted in that moment, and I realized I really was done. She started crying again and said I was giving up on us too easily. She said relationships require work and compromise, and that I wasn't even willing to try. I said she was right that relationships require work, but they also require both people to actually want to be in the relationship. I said I no longer wanted to be in a romantic relationship with her. She's been staying at her friend Amanda's place for the past few days, presumably to give me space to change my mind. But I'm not going to change my mind. I move out next Friday. I've already started packing, and I hired movers to handle the furniture. Belinda can keep anything she wants that we bought together. I just want to take my personal belongings and start fresh. Update 3: I moved out 2 weeks ago, and wanted to give everyone a final update on how things ended. Belinda came back to the apartment the day before I was scheduled to move. She had been staying with Amanda for almost a week, and I think she expected to come home to find me still there, surrounded by unpacked boxes, maybe having second thoughts about leaving. Instead, she found most of my stuff already in boxes and the movers scheduled to arrive the next morning. She asked if I was really going through with it. I said yes, I was moving out as planned. She said she had been talking to Amanda and Patty about everything, and they thought we should try couples counseling before making any permanent decisions. I told her I wasn't interested in couples counseling because I didn't consider us a couple anymore. She said she understood I was hurt, but that walking away wasn't the solution. She said we had built something good together and it was worth fighting for. I asked her what specifically we had built together that was worth fighting for. She mentioned our shared friend group, our comfortable routine, and how well we worked as a team when we weren't dealing with relationship drama. I pointed out that those things described a good roommate situation, not a romantic relationship. She got frustrated and said I was being deliberately difficult. She said she knew I still had feelings for her, and that I was just being stubborn. I asked her what made her think I still had feelings for her. She said she could tell by the way I looked at her sometimes, and that nobody changes their behavior as dramatically as I had unless they were trying to protect themselves from getting hurt. I said that was an interesting theory, but that she was wrong. I said the reason my behavior had changed was because my feelings had changed. She asked when exactly I had stopped loving her. I thought about it for a moment, then told her it was probably the night I realized she had told her friends about our conversation before she had even finished having it with me. I said that was when I understood she wasn't actually interested in having an honest conversation with me, she was just looking for validation from her friends about a decision she had already made. She said that wasn't fair, and that she had just needed support from her friends during a difficult conversation. I said I understood why she needed support, but the timing showed me that she wasn't really considering my perspective or leaving room for us to work through things together. She had already decided how the conversation was going to go. She started crying and said she never meant for things to end this way. I said I believed her, but that intentions didn't really matter as much as actions. The movers arrived the next morning at 8. Belinda stayed in her bedroom while they loaded my furniture and boxes. I had already moved most of my clothes and personal items to the new apartment over the previous few days, so the actual move was pretty quick. Before I left, I knocked on her bedroom door to say goodbye. She didn't answer, but I could hear her crying inside. I left my key on the kitchen counter next to a note with my new address, in case she needed to forward any mail or had questions about the security deposit. My new apartment is great. It's smaller than the place I shared with Belinda, but everything in it belongs to me and reflects my actual preferences instead of compromises we made as a couple. I have a reading chair by the window where I drink my morning coffee. I bought plants for the balcony. I set up my office exactly how I want it. I've been dating someone new for about 3 weeks. Her name is Rebecca, and she's a nurse at the hospital downtown. We met at the hiking group I joined a few months ago. She has her own apartment, pays her own bills, and has never asked me to fix anything for her or handle her errands. When Rebecca cooks dinner for us, she also cleans up afterward. When we go out, she pays for her own meal unless we specifically agree beforehand that one of us is treating the other. When she says she loves spending time with me, she demonstrates it by planning activities we can do together instead of expecting me to plan everything. It's been a good reminder of what a balanced relationship actually looks like. Belinda texted me last week asking if we could meet for coffee to talk. She said she wanted closure and to apologize for how things ended. I didn't respond to the text. We already had closure the day I moved out. She doesn't need my permission to apologize, and I don't need to hear her apology to move on with my life. From what I understand through mutual friends, she ended up moving back in with her parents. She's still doing freelance graphic design work, but she's also looking for a full-time job with benefits and a steady salary. Patty mentioned that Belinda has been asking about me and wondering if I'm happy in my new place. Patty asked if I would be open to talking to Belinda if she reached out. I told Patty that Belinda was welcome to reach out if she had something specific she needed to discuss, but that I wasn't interested in rekindling our friendship or having conversations about our past relationship. Patty said Belinda was having a hard time adjusting to living with her parents again, and that she felt like she had lost her best friend along with her boyfriend. I said that was unfortunate, but that it was a natural consequence of the choices Belinda made. I said I hoped she would figure things out and find happiness, but that I wasn't the right person to help her with that process. Some people might think I handled this situation too harshly. But I think Belinda needed to learn that relationships have real consequences, and that you can't expect people to wait around indefinitely while you figure out what you want. She told me she wasn't in love with me, so I stopped acting like someone who was in love with her. She wanted the benefits of having a devoted boyfriend without the obligation of being a devoted girlfriend. When I stopped providing those benefits, she realized what she was giving up. But by then, I had realized what I was giving up too. I was giving up my time, energy, and money to someone who didn't appreciate any of it enough to love me back. I was settling for a relationship where I cared more than she did, and where I was responsible for making everything work while she just enjoyed the results. I'm not angry with Belinda anymore. I think she's a decent person who made some selfish choices without fully thinking through the implications. But I also don't miss her or wish things had worked out differently. I'm much happier now with someone who actually wants to be with me, rather than someone who just likes the lifestyle I can provide. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My stepbrother stole my girlfriend and got me kicked out by framing me for theft. Years later they begged me to save her from prison after she stole $75,000. I, 25M, never imagined I would end up sharing my story on Reddit, but the events of the past few years have left me with no choice. It all began when my mom married Robert, 52M, 5 years ago. I was 20 then, working at a promising tech startup that developed mobile apps. I had a girlfriend, Sarah, 19F, whom I met during my first year of college. She was studying psychology, and we connected instantly over our shared love of indie music and horror movies. Life seemed perfect, I was making good money, had a loving girlfriend, and was steadily saving up to move out on my own. My mom met Robert at a charity event where she was volunteering. He came across as the perfect gentleman, successful real estate developer, well-spoken, and seemed genuinely interested in making our family work. They dated for a year before getting married in a small ceremony. I was happy for my mom. After raising me alone since I was 12, she deserved someone who could give her a good life. Robert had a son from his previous marriage, James, 22M at the time. From day one, there was tension between us. James had dropped out of college and was living at home, supposedly working on various business ideas that never materialized. He would constantly try to one-up me in everything. If I helped mom with groceries, he would spend the whole day reorganizing the pantry. If I talked about my job, he would interrupt with grandiose plans about his future business empire. I mostly ignored his behavior and focused on my relationship with Sarah. We had been together for 2 years, and things were getting serious. We spent most weekends together, either studying at cafes or binge-watching shows at my place. We had even started looking at apartments online, planning to move in together once we had enough savings. Sarah got along well with my mom, and I thought she was the one I would spend my life with. Everything changed after our family barbecue in summer. Robert insisted on having regular family gatherings to bond, and this was our third one. James met Sarah there for the first time. I noticed him staring at her throughout the evening, especially when she was helping mom in the kitchen. Sarah was wearing a blue sundress that day, I remember because she had just bought it for her cousin's wedding. James kept finding reasons to be wherever she was, offering to help with dishes, asking about her studies, laughing too hard at her jokes. After that day, living with James became unbearable. Whenever Sarah visited, he would emerge from his room and plant himself in the living room. He started texting her about random things, asking for book recommendations since she was into psychology, seeking advice about his non-existent girlfriend's problems, or sharing memes. At first, Sarah would show me these messages, saying how James was just being friendly and needed someone to talk to. The red flags were there, but I was too trusting. James started working out at the same gym Sarah went to. He began dressing differently, buying clothes similar to my style. He even got the same haircut as me. Looking back, he was trying to become my replacement right under my nose. One Tuesday, I came home early because a client meeting got cancelled. I found Sarah and James in our living room, sitting closer than friends should, their heads bent over his phone. They jumped apart when they saw me. Sarah claimed she was helping James with his dating profile. I confronted her later that night, but she turned it around on me, saying I was being possessive and that James was like a brother to her. I wanted to believe her because the alternative was too painful to consider. Around this time, I was saving up for an engagement ring. I had been putting away money from every paycheck for months, planning to propose on our 3rd anniversary. I kept track of my savings through a budgeting app, watching the numbers grow each month. Then one day, I noticed something odd. There were withdrawals I hadn't made. At first, I thought it was a bank error. But when I checked the transaction history, I found multiple withdrawals over the past 2 months, always on days when I was at work and James was home alone. The total amount missing was $15,000, my entire savings for the ring and our future apartment. I was devastated. When I confronted James, he didn't even try to deny it at first. He just smirked and asked me to prove it was him. Then, before I could gather any evidence, he went to his dad with an outrageous claim that I had stolen $10,000 from him. James spun an elaborate story about how he'd been saving money from odd jobs and online trading to start his own business. He claimed he kept the cash in his room because he didn't trust banks. Robert, who always favored his son, believed him immediately. The situation got worse when James produced bank statements showing transfers from his account to mine. They looked real enough to convince Robert and, to my shock, even my mom. The final blow came when Sarah broke up with me through a text message. She wrote that she couldn't believe I would steal from my own family, that she had seen signs of my greed before but had ignored them. A week later, I was walking to the parking lot after work when I saw them at the cafe across the street. Sarah was wearing the promise ring I had given her on our 2nd anniversary, but she was holding James's hand, laughing at something he was saying. They kissed, and my whole world shattered. Everything made sense, the texting, the gym, the friendly chats, they had been seeing each other behind my back for months. That evening, Robert confronted me in front of everyone. He demanded I return James's money or he would call the police. I tried showing him my bank records, proving that money had been stolen from me first, but he wouldn't listen. My own mother, who had raised me to be honest, now looked at me with doubt in her eyes. Robert gave me 24 hours to return the money or move out. I packed my things that night while my mom cried in her room. My college friend Marcus let me crash on his couch until I could figure things out. The next few months were tough. I worked overtime at my regular job and picked up freelance projects on the side. I cut off all contact with my family and blocked Sarah on everything. The betrayal was too deep to even consider maintaining any relationships. Looking back now, losing everything became the motivation I needed. I channeled all my anger and pain into work. Within a year, I had saved enough to start my own software development company. We specialize in security applications, ironic given how my trust was betrayed. The company has grown beyond my expectations, and we now have clients across the country. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since my original post blew up, and I need to share some shocking revelations that have come to light. A guy named Mike reached out to me through Reddit after seeing my post. Turns out he used to be James's close friend during the time all this happened, and what he told me made me realize that the betrayal was even worse than I thought. Mike and I met at a coffee shop last weekend. He looked nervous and kept checking his phone, saying he was worried James might find out about our meeting. According to Mike, James had been plotting to steal both my girlfriend and my money for months before he actually did it. It wasn't some impulsive decision or a case of falling in love with Sarah, it was a calculated plan to destroy my life. Mike showed me text messages from their group chat dating back to several months before the theft. James would brag about how he was going to take everything from me, saying things like I didn't deserve what I had. He was jealous of my job, my savings, and especially my relationship with Sarah. There were messages where he outlined a strategy to get close to her, describing how he would play the role of a caring friend while slowly poisoning her mind against me. The manipulation was elaborate. James created a whole narrative about me that he fed to Sarah. He told her I was talking badly about her to my coworkers, claiming he overheard me making fun of her career choices and saying she wasn't smart enough for me. He invented stories about me having a gambling problem, showing Sarah fake betting slips he had created. He even went as far as making up stories about me pressuring other girls at work for dates. But it gets worse. The bank statements James used to frame me? Mike admitted he helped create them using Photoshop. He worked at a print shop at the time and had access to high-quality scanning and printing equipment. They spent hours making sure the documents looked authentic, even using paper from the same bank. Mike says he feels guilty about his role in everything and offered to come clean to my family, but I told him not to bother. I've moved on and built a better life for myself. Mike also revealed something that made my blood boil. James had been secretly recording our conversations for months. He would start arguments with me when no one else was around, deliberately provoking me, then edit the recordings to make it sound like I was admitting to stealing from him. He had dozens of these manipulated audio clips ready to use if I ever tried to defend myself. The most painful revelation was about Sarah's role in all this. She wasn't just an innocent victim of James's manipulation, she was an active participant. Mike showed me screenshots of conversations between James and Sarah where they discussed their plans in detail. Sarah was the one who suggested making me look financially irresponsible to my family. She knew about the fake bank statements and even helped create the narrative about my supposed gambling problem. The betrayal went even deeper. Sarah had given James access to my phone multiple times when I wasn't around. She knew my passcode because I trusted her completely. They used this access to get into my banking apps and gather information about my accounts. Sarah also installed some kind of tracking app on my phone so they would know when I was coming home early from work. The money they stole from me, my entire savings for our future, went straight into funding their secret relationship. While I was working overtime and taking on extra projects to save for an engagement ring, they were using my money to take weekend trips to luxury resorts. Mike showed me their Instagram stories from those days, which they had hidden from me using Instagram's close friends feature. There were pictures of them at expensive restaurants, staying at high-end hotels, Sarah wearing new designer clothes that I had assumed were gifts from her parents. What makes me sick is remembering how Sarah would talk about saving money and being careful with expenses when she was with me. She would suggest we eat at home instead of going out, saying we needed to save for our future. All while she was spending my money with James behind my back. The final twist came yesterday when my mom left another voicemail. She was crying, saying she misses me and wants to make things right. She mentioned that Robert has been distant lately, and she's starting to see cracks in his perfect facade. Part of me wants to send her all the evidence Mike provided, show her just how thoroughly her stepson deceived everyone. But another part of me wants to leave it all in the past. I've worked hard to rebuild my life, and dragging up all this pain again might not be worth it. Mike offered to help me expose everything, but I declined. I told him I appreciate him coming clean, but I don't want to get involved in their lives again. The betrayal runs too deep, and no amount of exposure or revenge would undo the pain they caused. Besides, I'm focused on growing my company now, and success is the best revenge. Update 2. 3 months have passed since my last update, and the situation has taken several unexpected turns. I found out through a mutual friend, Ashley, that James and Sarah got married in a rushed ceremony last month. Ashley attended the wedding and told me it was a far cry from the lavish celebration Sarah used to dream about when we were together. Instead of the beach resort wedding she had always wanted, it was a quick ceremony at the local courthouse followed by a reception at a budget hotel. Ashley said the whole thing felt desperate rather than romantic. James spent most of the reception moving from table to table, trying to network with the wealthier guests. He was pitching his latest business idea, something about cryptocurrency trading, and practically begging for investors. Sarah, meanwhile, was showing off an expensive engagement ring, which Ashley later found out was bought entirely on credit. According to Ashley, their financial situation is dire. James lost his job at his father's company 3 months ago after several costly mistakes with client accounts. Robert finally realized his son wasn't as competent as he pretended to be. Sarah's shopping addiction, which I had no idea about during our relationship, has apparently spiraled out of control. She's maxed out multiple credit cards buying designer clothes and luxury items, often returning them for store credit to buy more things. Last week, completely out of the blue, James showed up at my office. My receptionist tried to turn him away, but he made such a scene that I agreed to see him for 5 minutes. I barely recognized him. His expensive clothes were wrinkled, his hair was unwashed, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He looked nothing like the arrogant, polished guy who had stolen my life 5 years ago. James broke down as soon as he sat down. Between sobs, he confirmed everything Mike had told me was true. He admitted to planning the whole thing with Sarah, stealing my money, and deliberately destroying my relationship with my family. But that wasn't why he came to see me. The real reason for his visit was even more shocking. Sarah has apparently developed a serious gambling addiction that started right after their wedding. She began small, playing poker on her phone, but it escalated quickly to online casinos and sports betting. To fund her addiction, she started stealing money from the accounting firm where she works. She would manipulate the books, diverting client payments to her personal accounts. Their situation reached a breaking point last week when her employer discovered the theft. The amount she stole is substantial, over $50,000. Her company gave her an ultimatum: either repay the entire amount within a month, or they would press criminal charges. On top of this, Sarah is 3 months pregnant. James spent an hour in my office, crying and begging for help. He offered to sign a legal document admitting to stealing from me years ago, promising to tell our parents the whole truth about what happened. He even pulled out his phone to show me their mounting bills and final notice letters from credit card companies. The amount they need to save Sarah from criminal charges is exactly double what they stole from me back then. James tried to frame this as some kind of cosmic justice. If I helped them now, they would pay me back double what they took. He even suggested I could take pleasure in watching them be indebted to me for years. I sat there listening to him, remembering all the nights I spent on Marcus's couch, working multiple jobs to rebuild my life after they destroyed it. I thought about my mom's tears when I left home, about the years of family relationships ruined by their lies. James looked at me with desperate eyes, probably expecting the same understanding and forgiveness I used to show back when we were stepbrothers. Sarah called me later that night from an unknown number. She was hysterical, begging me to at least think about helping them. She mentioned the baby, saying she couldn't bear the thought of giving birth in prison. She claimed she had changed, that she regretted everything she had done to me, and that she thinks about me every day. The same lies she used to tell when we were together, just with higher stakes now. I've spent the last week thinking about what to do. The evidence of their theft of company funds sits in my email, sent by James in his desperation to prove how serious their situation is. Part of me wants to forward it all to Sarah's employer, while another part wants to just continue ignoring their existence like I have for the past 5 years. Update 3. It's been 4 months since James came begging to my office, and I wanted to share what happened. After careful consideration, I decided not to give them the money. Instead, I forwarded all the evidence James had sent me, along with the details Mike had provided about their previous theft, to Sarah's employer. Some might call it revenge, but I saw it as justice. They needed to face the consequences of their actions for once. Sarah's company still pressed charges, but the information I provided helped them build a stronger case. She was arrested 2 weeks later. During the investigation, they discovered she had stolen closer to $75,000, not the $50,000 she claimed. She's now facing serious charges for embezzlement and fraud. James finally told our parents the truth, but only after everything fell apart. He confessed to stealing my money, creating fake evidence, and deliberately destroying my relationship with the family. But his confession wasn't out of guilt. He only came clean because he needed a place to stay after they got evicted from their apartment. Robert sent me a text message apology that read more like a legal disclaimer than genuine remorse. I apologize for believing James over you. It was a mistake on my part. My mom has been calling and texting constantly, begging me to consider some kind of family reconciliation. She keeps saying that Sarah and James have suffered enough, that with the baby coming we should try to be a family again. She even suggested that helping Sarah avoid prison would be the noble thing to do, especially since I'm financially successful now. I blocked her number after that last message. Sarah's parents have completely cut her off. They refused to help with her legal fees after learning about the embezzlement. According to Ashley, they were already suspicious about the circumstances surrounding our breakup years ago, and this confirmed their worst fears about their daughter. James and Sarah had to move back in with Robert. James is now working at a fast food restaurant, trying to save money for Sarah's legal defense. Sarah is under house arrest while awaiting her court date, wearing an ankle monitor and prohibited from accessing any devices with internet capabilities due to her gambling addiction. My mom showed up at my office last week, crying about how Sarah is struggling with her pregnancy while under house arrest. She tried to guilt-trip me by saying that my future niece or nephew shouldn't have to be born with their mother in prison. I had security escort her out. Robert attempted to reach out through my company's business email, suggesting we could handle things privately if I withdrew my statement to Sarah's employer. I had my lawyer send him a cease and desist letter. Some of my relatives have been posting on social media about how I'm being cruel and unforgiving, but they don't know the whole story. As for me, my company has expanded to 3 new cities in the past year. I recently got engaged to Emma, who I met at a tech conference 2 years ago. She knows my whole story and understands why I keep my distance from my family. We're planning a destination wedding next spring, and no, my family won't be receiving invitations. Some people might think I'm being harsh and not helping them, especially with a baby involved. But I believe they're finally facing the consequences of their own choices. Their current situation isn't my responsibility, and pregnancy isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card for fraud. I've blocked everyone except my mom, though I rarely respond to her messages. She still sends emotional texts about family forgiveness and second chances, but I've learned that sometimes the best response is no response at all. The company is thriving, I'm happily engaged, and I've found that success truly is the best revenge.
My mom said we can't be in 2 places at once. When I was in ICU and chose my bro's wedding, they spent thousands on his honeymoon instead of my hospital bills. Everyone cut them off, and their life is falling apart fast. Hey Reddit, my parents always had a favorite kid, and it sure wasn't me. I broke my spine 2 days before my brother's wedding, got left in the hospital alone, then blamed for ruining everything. They lied to the family, but the truth came out. Let me start from the top. My name's Elliot, I'm 26, and this whole mess started 2 days before my brother's wedding. Matthias is the golden child of the family. He's 2 years older, straight A's growing up, football team captain, now working some corporate job that my parents brag about like he invented the internet or something. Me? I was the kid who blended into the wallpaper. Did fine in school, worked through college, but no one ever introduced me as their pride and joy. And to be fair, I didn't really care. Matthias was the star, and I was used to it. It only got weird when my family made everything about him, even when it had nothing to do with him, like this wedding. My mom had been planning it like it was the royal wedding part 2. Dad basically turned into her assistant. And me? I was supposed to be the best man. But I learned later that one of Matthias's college friends stepped in as best man. Money was tight for me at the time. Student loans, rent, you name it. So when a buddy told me about this temporary construction gig that paid decent, I jumped on it. My plan was simple. Work 2 weeks, make enough to cover the tux rental, wedding gift, and maybe have some leftover for bills. Nothing crazy, just a short job to help out a bit. The site was on the edge of town, small commercial project, nothing that looked sketchy from the outside. A few metal frames, some scaffolding, piles of drywall stacked around. I wasn't new to labor jobs. I'd done warehouse work before. But this was my first time on a site with heights involved. The foreman did a safety talk, handed out helmets, pointed at the harnesses, told us to stay clipped in. Standard stuff. It was hot that day. The kind of heat where metal burns your hands if you forget your gloves for 2 seconds. We were working on the second level of scaffolding, bolting some metal sheets into place. I remember the smell of the dust and the sharp metallic sound every time someone dropped a wrench on the frame. Then it happened. I heard this loud ping, like metal snapping. The plank under my feet jerked hard, then dropped on one side. My stomach flipped before my brain caught up. I grabbed at the rail, but it swung loose with me. Whole thing collapsed like someone yanked the rug out. I don't remember the fall clearly. Just flashes. Sky. Ground. Someone yelling my name. Then pain slammed through my back like I'd landed on a bed of bricks. Next thing I know, there's chaos. Hard hats running around. Someone shouting for an ambulance. My legs felt wrong. Not like a sleep wrong. Just wrong. Breathing hurt. I kept trying to shift to see my legs, but they told me to stay still. At the hospital, everything blurred together. Bright lights, people in scrubs moving fast, someone asking if I had family to call. I mumbled my parents' number. A nurse wrote it down and disappeared. The doctor leaned over me at one point and said, "You've got spinal fractures and a broken femur. We need to operate now." I nodded because what else do you say? That's when my best friend Jackson showed up. He looked pale as hell, kept asking the staff if I was going to be okay. They handed him a clipboard because my parents weren't there yet. It was admission and emergency contact paperwork, so he filled it out. I drifted in and out while they wheeled me somewhere. Right before I went under, I heard one of the nurses on the phone saying, "Yes, ma'am, he's about to go into surgery." "Yes, I understand, but..." Then she hung up and muttered, "She said they can't make it. Rehearsal dinner tonight." I thought I misheard. I had to have misheard. When I woke up after surgery, I was in the ICU, monitors chirping, a blood pressure cuff biting my arm. Jackson was in the chair by the bed, looking wrecked. He told me they put rods in my leg, screws in my spine, and that my parents knew but were still at the rehearsal. He'd called them himself. They said they'll come tomorrow, he muttered, shaking his head. I didn't even know what to say. The pain meds made everything foggy, but I remember feeling this weird mix of anger and disbelief. Like, yeah, it was Matthias's big weekend, but I was in a hospital bed full of metal rods. Tomorrow? Really? The nurses came in and out, checking vitals, telling me not to move too much. At some point, a guy from the site dropped by to see how I was doing. He said the scaffolding supplier was sending reps to check the wreckage, that OSHA might get involved. I barely processed it. I never heard anything after that. If there was an investigation, it happened without me. When I woke up, it felt like my spine had been replaced with fire. The lights above me were harsh. The room smelled like antiseptic, and for a second, I couldn't even tell if it was day or night. My throat was dry and my voice cracked when I tried to speak. Hey, easy, Jackson said from the chair next to my bed. He looked rough, like he hadn't slept. You've been out for hours. Surgery went okay, but it was bad, Elliot. Real bad. I asked what time it was. He told me it was noon. Wedding rehearsal had been last night. The actual wedding was tomorrow. Did my parents come? I asked. He hesitated. No, they said they're busy. Busy, I repeated. Yeah, rehearsal dinner, he muttered, rubbing his eyes. I called them this morning. They said they'll come by after the wedding's over. I didn't answer right away, because I honestly didn't know what to say. My back throbbed like someone had stuck a car jack under my ribs. A nurse came in with a clipboard, checked the monitors, then asked if I wanted to try sitting up. I tried. My body protested immediately. My ribs felt like they were caving in, my leg felt wrong, and my head spun so hard I almost blacked out. The nurse told me to take deep breaths, like that was going to fix anything. After she left, Jackson told me he tried calling Matthias too. Straight to voicemail. No callback. A little later, Mom texted me that she'd already told him I was in the ICU, and they'd come after the wedding. The doctor showed up mid-afternoon. He explained the damage like he was reading off a grocery list. Broken femur, 3 spinal fractures, 2 cracked ribs, and a long recovery ahead. Physical therapy. Months of it. Maybe a year before things felt close to normal. He said it like normal was even still an option. And through all this, my family was out having wine and giving speeches like nothing had happened. Later, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. Jackson put it on speaker. Hi, Elliot, she said, way too cheerful. We can't be in 2 places at once, you know? The wedding's tomorrow, so much to do. We'll check in after things settle. Hope you're resting. That was it. Like she was leaving a note about running late for dinner, not her son being in the ICU. I stared at the phone. Jackson swore under his breath. An hour later, my cousin texted me, Hey, are you coming to the reception tomorrow? I wrote back, Can't. In the hospital. Surgery yesterday. She answered, Wait, what? Since when? I told her it was 2 days ago. She didn't text back after that. The next morning, wedding day, I was still in the hospital bed, barely able to move. Jackson left around noon to shower and grab food. While he was gone, I watched other patients get visitors. Husbands, wives, kids, people bringing flowers, cards, balloons. No one from my family came for me. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Mom again, same tone. Hey, honey, just wanted to say we're at the wedding now. It's beautiful. You'd love it. Big day today. We'll swing by when things quiet down. Hope you're feeling better. She said it like I was homesick with a cold, not stuck in a hospital bed with metal rods in my spine. I listened twice, saved it, then put the phone down. From Facebook posts, I got the highlights. Matthias in his tux, his bride glowing, my parents smiling like they were hosting a royal event. Caption after caption about family first and best day ever. I stopped scrolling after 10 minutes. That evening, Jackson came back with takeout. He tried talking about sports, random memes, whatever he could think of to fill the silence. I picked at my food, mostly pushing it around. You want me to call them again? He asked finally. No point, I said. They made their choice. That night, I couldn't sleep. Machines beeped. Someone down the hall kept coughing. Nurses laughed about something at the desk. By the time the wedding weekend ended, I had a couple of messages, 0 visits, and a very clear picture of where I stood in my family's list of priorities. The Monday after, a nurse asked if my parents were coming soon to help plan my discharge. I told her not to hold her breath, because at that point, I already knew. The hospital days blurred together after the wedding weekend. Every morning, some doctor or nurse came in with a clipboard, asking if I had family who could take me in once I was released. I kept giving the same answer. I'll figure it out. Meanwhile, Jackson's parents had already offered to let me stay at their place while I recovered. They had a spare room, no stairs, and the kind of people who stocked soup and crackers like it was their job. They didn't ask for anything in return, just told me to focus on healing. Inpatient PT started in week 2. The first time they tried getting me upright with a walker, I nearly collapsed. My left leg couldn't take my weight, and my back screamed like it was about to snap again. The therapist kept saying things like, "You're making progress," even though all I managed was standing for 30 seconds before sweating like I ran a marathon. No calls from my parents, no visits. Matthias didn't text either, not once. The only people showing up were Jackson, his girlfriend Riley sometimes, and 2 of my college friends who brought bad vending machine coffee and tried to keep things light. We played dumb mobile games on my phone between PT sessions. They made the time pass. My parents finally showed up in week 3. I didn't even recognize them at first. My mom had on this bright floral dress like she came from some garden party. My dad carried grocery store flowers wrapped in crinkly plastic. "Elliot," Mom said like she was announcing me to someone. I was propped up in bed, wearing the brace they strapped around my torso to keep my spine from moving too much. My leg had metal rods, fresh scars running down the side. "You look okay," Dad said finally. I didn't answer right away. They put the flowers on the little table by my bed. My mom sat, smoothed her dress, then said, "You know, this whole thing really took the focus off Matthias's wedding." I thought I misheard. "Excuse me?" I said. She sighed like I was being difficult. "People were confused, Elliot. Some relatives asked why you weren't there. It made things awkward. You could have told people you were fine so they didn't worry." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. Dad cleared his throat. "Your brother felt like the accident overshadowed the day a little. Obviously, we're glad you're okay, but it was hard for him too." I looked down at my brace because looking at them made me feel like I was losing my mind. "Hard for him?" I repeated. "I fell 3 stories and broke my spine. Sorry that ruined the party." Neither of them said anything. When they left, they told me to keep them updated. Like I was sending postcards from vacation instead of sitting in a hospital bed, learning to walk again. That night, Jackson came by with his mom. She brought homemade soup that didn't taste like cardboard. I told them about the visit. Jackson swore under his breath again. His mom shook her head, muttering something about people having messed up priorities. Over the next week, the physical therapy got harder. Longer sessions, less help from the staff, so I had to rely on my arms and the walker more. Every step felt like someone was jamming a knife into my lower back, but I kept doing it. Matthias finally called once, not to ask how I was doing. Number. He called to say he didn't want drama, and hoped I understood why things happened the way they did. I told him I broke my spine, not a piñata. He said I was being intense. When I was finally cleared to leave the hospital, my parents didn't offer to take me in. Didn't even ask. Jackson's parents showed up with their SUV, loaded my bag, and drove me to their place like it was the most normal thing in the world. They set me up in their guest room with a recliner, a pile of pillows, and the Wi-Fi password taped to the wall. My mom texted later that night, "Glad you're out. Keep us posted." I stared at it for a long time before putting the phone face down, because at that point, there wasn't anything left to say. The first week at Jackson's parents' place was slow. Physical therapy 3 times a week. Short walks from the bedroom to the living room with a cane. A list of exercises taped to the wall next to the recliner. Jackson's mom cooked like she was training for a competition, and his dad kept making bad jokes to keep things from feeling heavy. Meanwhile, I started getting bills from the hospital. The insurance covered some of it, but there were still deductibles, follow-up appointments, medication, and therapy sessions stacking up. I called my parents to talk about it because I thought, maybe, just maybe, they'd help. They didn't answer the first few times. When my mom finally picked up, I explained the situation, listed the costs, told her it was tight since I couldn't work yet. She was quiet for a second, then said, "We can't right now. We already gave Matthias some money for the honeymoon, and we still need to help them with the house fund." I thought I misheard. "The honeymoon?" "Well, yes," she said. "They just got married. They need support starting their life. You're an adult, Elliot. We can't fund everything." I was sitting there with a brace on my back, metal rods in my leg, pain meds lined up on the table like candy, and they couldn't help because they were paying for Matthias to sit on a beach drinking overpriced smoothies. I told her never mind and hung up. A few days later, they came to visit for the first time since I left the hospital. Walked right into Jackson's parents' living room like they owned the place. My mom started with, "Oh, this is cozy. Like we were giving them a tour of an Airbnb instead of me recovering in someone else's house because my own parents couldn't be bothered. Matthias wasn't with them. He was posting honeymoon pictures online, sunset dinners, boat rides, the works. My dad asked how physical therapy was going. I said fine. He nodded like he was checking a box. Then my mom said, "We've been hearing things from some relatives. They think we ignored you during the wedding." We told them that wasn't true, of course. I looked at her. It was true. It was. She frowned like I'd just insulted her. Elliot, it was Matthias's wedding. People don't understand how much stress we were under. We couldn't be everywhere at once. You didn't show up at all, I said flatly. Dad shifted in his seat. You're making this sound worse than it was. Dad said I was making it sound worse than it was, that I should have played it down for the relatives. I pointed at the brace. Yeah, I was doing great. They didn't like my tone. Mom said I was being dramatic, that accidents happen, but weddings are once in a lifetime. I asked her if she thought spines healed in a week. She changed the subject. After they left, Jackson walked in from the kitchen with a glass of water and asked how it went. I told him they wanted me to stop making them look bad. Unbelievable, he muttered. I started getting messages from cousins after that. Apparently, my parents were telling everyone I was staying with friends because I needed space after the accident, not because they basically abandoned me in the hospital. One aunt called and asked why I didn't come to the wedding at all. I told her I was in surgery while they were cutting the cake. She went silent, then said my parents told a completely different story. Of course they did. Matthias finally called after he got back from the honeymoon. No, how are you? No, sorry about the hospital. He started with, Mom said you've been telling people we ignored you. That's not fair. Not fair? I said. You knew I was in the ICU and didn't even text. I didn't want drama at the wedding, he said like he was the victim. I broke my spine, Matthias. Sorry if that clashed with your playlist. He told me I was bitter. I told him he was selfish. That was our whole conversation. By the end of that month, collections were calling about one of the surgery bills. Because the hospital, the surgeon, and anesthesia all billed separately. My parents still didn't offer to help. They did, however, post pictures from a family barbecue I wasn't invited to. Big smiles, matching shirts, captions about family means everything. I stopped checking their pages after that. What they didn't realize was some of the relatives were starting to ask questions on their own. And I wasn't lying to anyone. I just told the truth. And people didn't like what they heard. Their word traveled fast once my cousins started asking questions. I didn't go around starting conversations about it, but when someone called and asked where I'd been the past few months, I told them straight. The accident, the hospital, the wedding, the whole thing. No exaggerations, no yelling, just facts. Some of them didn't believe me at first. My parents had been spinning the story that I skipped the wedding because I was working too much and then needed space, after some argument that never even happened. The moment I told my side, you could hear the shock in their voices. But I didn't have time to worry about what the extended family thought. The bills were stacking up. One afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table in Jackson's parents' house, I opened another envelope marked urgent. Final notice, I read out loud, holding it up for Jackson. He was leaning against the counter, arms crossed. That the surgery bill? Yeah, I said. Insurance covered most, but there's still $5,000 left on this one alone. Physical therapy's another 2. Meds keep adding up too. I laughed without humor. Guess Mom and Dad are busy paying for Matthias's infinity pool or whatever. Jackson frowned. They're really not helping? At all. They said they already gave Matthias money for the honeymoon and house fund, I said, sliding the paper across the table. So no. Apparently me learning to walk again isn't in the budget. He looked at the bill, then at me. Don't stress it right now. Kind of hard not to, I said. He didn't answer, just picked up the envelope and walked out of the room. That night, Jackson's parents sat down with me after dinner. His dad had the bill in his hand. We're gonna cover this, he said simply. I froze. No, I can't. You can, his mom interrupted, sliding a check across the table. It's a loan. When you're back on your feet, you pay us back. Until then, focus on getting better. I didn't even know what to say. These weren't people swimming in money. They just cared enough to help when my own family didn't. You sure about this? I asked finally. His dad shrugged. It's what family does. That hit harder than I expected. Over the next few weeks, the calls from collections stopped. The hospital confirmed the balance was paid. Jackson's parents never brought it up again. Meanwhile, Jackson became my unofficial physical therapist when the real ones weren't around. He drove me to appointments, sat in the waiting room scrolling on his phone, then walked me back to the car like I was 80 years old. At home, he made me do the boring exercises the PT gave me: leg lifts, stretches, balancing stuff. If I complained, he threw a pillow at me and told me to shut up. We watched a lot of late-night TV those weeks. Some nights we didn't talk much. Others, we ended up laughing about dumb high school memories until my ribs hurt. It wasn't just the help with the bills. It was the way his family made space for me like it wasn't a favor. Like I belonged there. Matthias texted once during this time. Heard you got the hospital paid off. Guess it wasn't that bad after all. I didn't answer. Because how do you even respond to something like that? As my walking improved, I started doing remote work again. Nothing crazy. Data entry, freelance writing gigs, whatever I could do from the recliner with my laptop propped on pillows. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to cover my phone bill, meds, and some groceries, so I wasn't draining Jackson's parents completely. I set up a payment plan with them for the hospital loan even though they told me not to rush. His mom said, "We're not worried about it, Elliot." But I was. I didn't want to be someone's permanent charity case. Meanwhile, the family drama kept brewing in the background. One cousin messaged me saying my mom told everyone I refused visitors in the hospital because I was embarrassed about the accident. I told him the truth. Nobody showed up until 3 weeks later. And when they did, they complained about the wedding. Next thing I knew, my aunt called demanding to know why my parents lied. I told her to ask them. One Saturday, Jackson and I were sitting on the porch when he said, "You realize your parents are digging their own grave here, right? They keep lying, people keep finding out. It's on them." I nodded. "Yeah, but they'll blame me when everyone stops taking their side." "Let them," he said. "People see what's real eventually." By the end of that month, I was taking short indoor walks without the cane. Still slow and stiff, but moving. Jackson filmed it on his phone, cheering like I just won a marathon. I sent the video to my parents. No response. By the time summer rolled around, the truth had legs of its own. I didn't push it. I didn't post anything online or start any arguments. But every time someone called or messaged asking where I'd been the last few family events, I told them the same thing. The accident happened 2 days before the wedding. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. No one showed up until after it was over. And when they did, they blamed me for making it awkward. That was it. No insults. No drama. Just the facts. And people didn't like what they heard. My cousin Viola was the first to call my parents out. She told me later she asked my mom why nobody knew about the accident. Apparently, my mom said I didn't want anyone to fuss and that I asked for privacy. Viola called BS on the spot. She'd seen the hospital bracelets when she visited me. She knew I couldn't even walk. After that, the calls started piling up. Aunts, uncles, even some family friends. They wanted to hear my side, so I gave it to them. Straightforward. No anger in my voice. The more people heard, the more cracks started showing in my parents' story. There was this annual family barbecue that July. Big deal for my parents. They hosted, loved being the center of attention. Pictures on Facebook, long captions about family traditions. But this year, half the usual crowd didn't show. I wasn't invited, obviously, but Viola sent me a photo someone posted. My parents sitting at a picnic table with empty chairs around them. Matthias there too, looking annoyed. Later that night, he texted me, "You're turning people against us. You need to stop." I stared at the message for a while before replying, "I just answered questions. Not my fault the truth doesn't make you look good." He didn't respond after that. A week later, Matthias's wife Jenny reached out. Said she wanted to meet for coffee. She showed up looking tired, like someone who hadn't slept enough lately. After some small talk, she finally said, "Matthias told me about the accident months later. He made it sound like you were fine the whole time." I told her what really happened. The hospital, the voicemail about the wedding being more important, the bills Jackson's family covered because my own parents refused. Jenny just stared at her cup, shaking her head. "I wish I'd known," she said finally. "I would have come to see you. I thought you didn't want visitors." "That's what they told people," I said. She looked angry, but not at me. One afternoon, my parents came to Jackson's house unannounced. Jackson's dad answered the door while I was doing my PT exercises in the living room. "We need to talk to Elliot," my mom said, like it was urgent. I told them we could meet at the coffee shop down the street instead. No way was I letting them start something in front of Jackson's parents after everything they'd done for me. We met the next day. They sat across from me, both looking serious. My dad started, "You've been telling people things that make us look bad." I leaned back in my chair. I told them what happened. That's all. Mom jumped in. "You're twisting it, making it sound like we abandoned you." "You did abandon me," I said. Calm, even voice, no yelling. One surgery, I couldn't walk, and you didn't show up because it might ruin the wedding. They didn't like that. My dad said I was ungrateful. My mom said family shouldn't air private matters. Then maybe you should have acted like family in the first place, I said. Conversation over. Over the next month, things got quiet. My parents stopped calling. Matthias didn't text. But the relatives kept reaching out. Viola told me several of them confronted my parents about the lies. A few even told Matthias to his face that he should have been at the hospital instead of smiling for photos. One uncle apparently canceled on my parents for Thanksgiving, saying he didn't feel right celebrating family with people who don't act like family. I didn't ask for any of this. It just happened. One evening, sitting on the porch with Jackson, I told him about the barbecue, the coffee meeting with Jenny, the relatives pulling away. He nodded slowly. That's what happens when you keep lying. Eventually, people noticed the smoke. I told him I didn't even want revenge. I just wanted to be left alone. Doesn't matter, he said. They built this mess. Now they get to live in it. Late August, Matthias finally texted, "Can we talk?" We met at a diner off the highway. He walked in wearing a polo shirt like he came straight from golf or something, not looking at me until he sat down. "No hello, no, how are you?" "You happy now?" he started, loud enough that the waitress looked over. "Family won't stop calling me. People skipped the barbecue. You made us look like monsters." I stayed calm. "I didn't make you look like anything." I told them what happened. He leaned forward, voice sharp. "No, you spun it so everyone thinks we abandoned you. Like we didn't have a wedding to run, like we weren't under pressure too." "You did abandon me," I said. "The surgery. I see you alone." He shook his head like I was the unreasonable one. "You always do this. Play the victim. Like the whole world's against you. You could have told people you were fine, but no. You let them think we're heartless." I laughed once. "You want me to send a thank you card for ignoring me? Maybe frame the voicemail where Mom said the wedding was more important?" His face tightened. "You know what your problem is? You can't stand that the spotlight wasn't on you. It killed you that my wedding mattered more than your accident. That actually made me blink. You think I fell off scaffolding for attention? Seriously?" He didn't back down. "Wouldn't be the first time you made things harder for everyone else." I stared at him. "I was fighting to walk again while you were on a beach drinking cocktails. Jackson's parents paid my hospital bills because our own parents wouldn't. And you're mad because people finally saw through the perfect little image you built? That's what this is about?" He leaned back, smirking like he won something. "People wouldn't even know if you kept your mouth shut." "Right," I said, "because the truth only counts if it makes you look good. Families stick together," he snapped. "Families show up," I shot back. "Families don't skip the hospital because it clashes with the cake-cutting schedule." His voice rose. "You could have waited. You didn't have to tell everyone." I laughed again, this time shaking my head. "Sorry my accident wasn't convenient for you, Matthias. Next time I'll check your calendar before I break my spine." He slammed his hand on the table, silverware rattling. "You ruined everything. The wedding, the family events, Mom and Dad's reputation. You ruined it," I said, cutting him off. "All I did was stop covering for you." He opened his mouth, ready to fire back, but nothing came out. For a second, he just sat there, jaw tight, like it finally hit him. There was no spin left to hide behind. I dropped some cash on the table for my coffee and stood up. "You wanted the crown, Matthias. Congrats. But don't get mad at me because it's falling apart now." I left him sitting there, red-faced in the middle of the diner, people staring from nearby tables. In early December, Jenny texted me. "We separated for a bit," she wrote. "Matthias is staying at his friend's place." I didn't ask for details. None of my business. But later, Viola said Jenny told a few people she was tired of Matthias playing the victim, tired of him blaming everyone else when the truth caught up. I believed it. That diner conversation showed me all I needed to know about my brother's talent for dodging responsibility. Meanwhile, my life moved on. I kept working remote gigs while finishing physical therapy. By February, I was fully off the cane outdoors. Still stiff sometimes, but nothing like before. Jackson's parents refused every time I tried to start paying them back for the hospital loan. "You need time," his dad said. "Money can wait." But I set the money aside anyway. Month after month, building it up until I could hand them the full amount. When I finally gave them the check in March, his mom hugged me like I'd just come home from war. They didn't make me feel like charity. They made me feel like family. Spring came, and with it came more distance between me and my parents. They tried calling a few times, mostly to talk about how the family felt divided lately. My dad said it like some mysterious outside force had caused it, not their own choices. I told him I wasn't interested in pretending things were fine. If they wanted a relationship, It had to start with owning up to what happened. He said I was being dramatic. I said then we had nothing to talk about. By May, Matthias reached out again. This time in person. He showed up at the park where I was walking laps for exercise. No hello, no small talk. Just straight into it. You told people about Jenny leaving? He snapped. I raised an eyebrow. No. Viola mentioned it. Guess word got around. You enjoy this, don't you? His voice was bitter. Everyone treating me like the bad guy while you sit back looking innocent? I kept my hands in my jacket pockets. You made yourself the bad guy, Matthias. I didn't tell you to ignore me in the hospital. I didn't tell you to lie to the family. That was all you. He laughed without humor. You think you're so perfect now? Because people feel sorry for you? Nobody feels sorry for me, I said evenly. They just finally see you for who you are. He didn't like that. One accident, and you act like you're the hero of the story. I looked at him for a long second. No hero here. Just someone who stopped covering for you. For once, he didn't have a comeback. He stood there, jaw tight, then turned and walked off without another word. 2 weeks later, Jenny filed for divorce. Viola told me. Apparently, Jenny said she was tired of his selfishness, tired of the Golden Boy Act, tired of carrying the marriage while he played victim about the family drama he caused. Matthias moved back in with my parents after that. The last time I saw them all together was at a cousin's birthday in the next July. I showed up because Viola invited me directly. My parents tried small talk, asking about work, about therapy, about whether I was feeling better these days. I gave short answers and kept eating my cake. Matthias didn't say anything to me at all, just sat there looking like someone who'd watched his kingdom crumble one brick at a time. I left early, walking out into the warm evening air. My legs felt steady. My back didn't ache as much anymore. On the way home, I passed a construction site. New scaffolding, bright warning signs, workers in harnesses double-checking bolts before climbing. I stopped for a second, watching them work. Then I kept walking, because that part of my life was over. The accident, the lies, the drama, none of it was mine to carry anymore. I had my health back. I had people who showed up when it mattered. The rest could fall apart without me. And it did. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.
10 years of marriage with Cassandra, and I thought we had something solid. We met in college, got married young, built what I believed was a good life together. She works in marketing. I'm in software development. Decent money between us. Her family was always involved, maybe too involved, but I figured that came with marrying into a tight-knit group. Her sisters, Sharon and Bryn, plus her mother, Geraldine, they're constantly in our business. But I dealt with it because I loved Cassandra. What I didn't know was how much they all actually hated me. 3 weeks ago, I was helping Cassandra set up her new iPhone. She'd been complaining about her old one being slow and finally upgraded. While transferring her apps and data, I was logged into her iCloud to make sure everything synced properly. She was in the shower, and her notifications were going crazy on the laptop screen. I figured it was work stuff since she always gets bombarded with messages. But then I saw a WhatsApp notification from a group called Operation Divorce Dan. My name is Dan. I clicked on WhatsApp through the browser, and there it was, a group chat with Cassandra, Sharon, Bryn, and Geraldine. The messages made my blood run cold, but I kept reading because I needed to see exactly what I was dealing with. Sharon had written, "He's so stupid. He actually thinks we're celebrating 10 years. This is going to be perfect." Bryn replied, "I already called the moving company. We can clear his stuff while he's at work Thursday. Everything goes to storage unit 247 on 5th Street. Mom got the key yesterday." Geraldine chimed in, "My lawyer friend has the divorce papers ready. Dan will be served right at the party. He'll be homeless by 6 p.m. Can't wait to see his face." Cassandra had sent a laughing emoji and added, "We should film it for TikTok. Watch this loser get what he deserves. 10 years of pretending to love this pathetic man, and I can finally be free." I screenshot everything. Every single message going back months. They'd been planning this for half a year, timing it perfectly for our anniversary celebration that I thought we were having this Saturday. The surprise party I believed Cassandra was throwing for us was actually my own eviction and divorce ambush. The messages revealed so much more. They talked about how they'd always seen me as beneath their family, How Cassandra only married me because she was pregnant senior year? Something I never knew since she miscarried early and never mentioned it was the reason for our quick engagement. How they'd been waiting for the right moment to destroy me completely. Sharon mentioned that I was too comfortable and needed to be knocked down a few pegs. Bryn talked about how they wanted me to lose everything so I'd learn my place. Geraldine kept calling me worthless and saying her daughter deserved better than some nobody programmer. They had it all planned out. Cassandra was going to act normal all week, then invite me to what I thought was our anniversary dinner Saturday evening. Instead, I'd walk into a room full of divorce papers and moving boxes, with all of them filming my reaction for social media. They wanted to humiliate me completely. What they don't know is that I've been expecting something like this for a while now. Not this exactly, but I've sensed the coldness, the way they look at me during family gatherings, the whispered conversations that stop when I enter a room. I've been quietly preparing for years, making sure I was financially protected and legally covered if Cassandra ever tried to leave me with nothing. See, I'm not the stupid nobody programmer they think I am. I've been building wealth through investments and side projects they know nothing about. I've got assets in my name only, backup plans they never considered, and connections they're completely unaware of. While they've been plotting for 6 months, I've been strategically positioning myself for 4 years. I've spent the last 3 weeks acting completely normal, while taking screenshots of every new message they send. They keep adding details about their plan, getting more excited about Saturday. Yesterday, Cassandra even asked me what time I wanted to leave for our special dinner. And I could barely keep a straight face knowing what she actually meant. The storage unit they rented? I know exactly where it is. The lawyer Geraldine mentioned? I've already done my research. The moving company Bryn hired? They're going to have some interesting complications tomorrow. Tonight is Friday. Tomorrow at 7 p.m., I'm supposed to walk into my own surprise party. But I've got surprises of my own that they're not going to see coming. I've been planning for this moment longer than they've been planning to destroy me. And by Sunday night, all 3 of these women are going to understand exactly what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. Update 1. Holy crap, lies unlocked. Yesterday was absolutely insane, and I'm still processing everything that went down. Thanks to everyone who commented on my original post on Lies Unlocked. Some of you called exactly what was going to happen. Saturday morning started normal enough. Cassandra was acting extra sweet, probably thinking she was being clever. She made me breakfast and kept talking about how excited she was for our special evening. She even brought up specific memories from our wedding, talking about how much she loved me and how she couldn't wait to celebrate 10 amazing years together. The whole time I'm watching her perform this act, knowing exactly what she thinks is going to happen in a few hours. Every smile was fake. Every kiss felt like a betrayal. And every sweet word was just part of her elaborate lie. It took everything I had not to call her out right then and there. Around 2 p.m., she said she needed to run errands to prepare for tonight. She claimed she had to pick up flowers and stop by the restaurant to confirm our reservation. Perfect timing. As soon as she left, I made my first move. See, here's what I didn't mention in my original post. That storage unit they rented? It's in my name. Bryn used my credit card information from when I helped her move last year. She still had my details saved and figured I'd never notice a storage rental charge. Except I monitor every transaction on every account I have, and I've been watching that unit for weeks. What made this even better is that during my 3 weeks of monitoring their chat, I learned they'd been moving my stuff gradually, not all at once, but piece by piece when I was at work. They thought they were being clever, taking things I wouldn't notice right away. My old college textbooks, some tools from the garage, winter clothes I wouldn't need until months from now. They had this whole system worked out. Bryn would text when the coast was clear, Sharon would bring her SUV, and they'd load up whatever they could carry. They documented everything with photos, making lists of what they'd taken and what was left to grab. I drove straight there and cleared it out. Every single box, every piece of furniture they'd already moved. I had my own truck and moved everything to a facility across town that they'll never find. Changed the locks on their unit and prepaid 6 months in my name only. But here's where it gets interesting. I didn't just move my stuff, I replaced it. I filled their storage unit with all the items from my home office that I've been wanting to get rid of for years. Old broken electronics, outdated computer equipment, stacks of useless paperwork. Made it look like someone had definitely been there and cleared out valuable items, leaving behind obvious junk. Then I went home and waited. Cassandra came back around 5 p.m. with Sharon and Bryn. They were all giggly and excited, clearly thinking they were about to pull off the perfect ambush. Geraldine showed up at 6:30 with a manila envelope that I assumed contained the divorce papers. At exactly 7 p.m., Cassandra told me it was time to leave for our anniversary dinner. We got in my car, and she directed me to drive to Sharon's house. When we pulled up, I could see movement through the windows, and I knew this was it. Cassandra said she wanted to stop by quickly to pick something up. The moment we walked through the door, they were all standing there with huge grins on their faces. Geraldine stepped forward with the envelope, and Sharon had her phone out, clearly ready to record. That's when I said the words I'd been practicing for 3 weeks. Before you start filming, you might want to check storage unit 247. The looks on their faces. Cassandra went completely white. Bryn actually dropped her phone. Sharon started asking what I meant, but I could see the panic building. I told them I knew about Operation Divorce Stan. I knew about every single message, every plan, every detail they'd spent months putting together. I pulled out my phone and started reading their own words back to them. The room exploded. Cassandra immediately started screaming that I had invaded her privacy, that I was crazy for spying on her personal conversations. Geraldine demanded to know how I had accessed private family discussions. Sharon kept yelling that I was sick and manipulative. But here's what was beautiful about the whole thing. They couldn't deny what they'd said. Every cruel word, every plan to humiliate me, every insult they'd thrown around for months. It was all right there in black and white. Cassandra tried to claim that it was just venting, that they never actually planned to go through with any of it, except I had screenshots from yesterday showing Bryn confirming the moving truck rental. And Geraldine talking about serving me papers tonight. The argument went on for over an hour, and it got ugly. Bryn kept insisting that I deserved everything they'd planned, because I was a deadbeat who had been holding Cassandra back for years. She said I was dead weight, that Cassandra could have married someone successful if she hadn't gotten stuck with me. Sharon said I was pathetic and needed to accept that their family had never wanted me around, that they'd been hoping Cassandra would come to her senses for years. But Geraldine, she got really angry. Started telling me that I had no idea who I was messing with, that her family had connections and resources I couldn't imagine, that I'd made a huge mistake thinking I could outsmart them. She kept going on about how they could make my life miserable, how they had ways of destroying people who crossed them. Cassandra was flip-flopping between trying to deny everything and getting furious that I'd violated her privacy. One minute she was claiming the messages were just harmless venting between family members. The next minute she was screaming that I was a controlling freak who had no right to spy on her personal conversations. That's when I told them about the storage unit being cleared out, about how the moving company they had hired was going to show up Monday to an empty space, about how every single part of their perfect plan had already fallen apart. I also mentioned a few other details I'd kept to myself, like how I'd been recording our conversations for the past 2 weeks using an app on my phone, how I'd documented every time Cassandra had lied to my face about her plans, how I'd been building a case showing their conspiracy to defraud me. The screaming match that followed was incredible. Cassandra accused me of stealing from them, even though it was literally my own possessions. Bryn started demanding I tell them where I'd moved everything. Sharon threatened to call the police. Geraldine kept escalating, saying she was going to ruin my career, that she had friends who could make sure I never worked in tech again. She was ranting about how her deceased husband had built a network of powerful people, and how she could destroy me financially and professionally. So I called their bluff. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 right there in front of them. When the operator answered, I said I wanted to report identity theft and credit card fraud, and that I had documentation showing someone had used my financial information to rent storage space without my permission. They shut up real fast. The police didn't come out since I told the operator I'd resolved the immediate issue, But the point was made, everything they'd done could be turned around on them legally, and they knew it. I left them standing there and drove home. Cassandra rode back in complete silence, probably trying to figure out her next move. When we got inside, she immediately went to our bedroom and slammed the door. I could hear her on the phone with someone, probably one of her sisters, but I couldn't make out the words. About an hour later, she came out and tried a completely different approach. Suddenly, she was apologetic, saying the group chat was just family drama and that she never meant any of it. She claimed her sisters had pressured her into going along with their plan, and that she'd been trying to find a way out of it. She said she loved me and wanted to work things out, that we could go to counseling and fix our marriage. She even suggested we could renew our vows and have a real celebration of our 10 years together. I listened to every word and didn't believe a single one. This woman had spent months planning to humiliate me publicly, had called me pathetic and worthless to her family, had arranged to have me served with divorce papers as entertainment for their social media. But here's the thing, lies unlocked. This was just the opening shot. They think losing their storage access and having their plan exposed is the worst I can do to them. They think Cassandra can sweet-talk her way out of this, and everything will go back to normal. They have no idea what's coming next. See, while they were spending months planning Operation Divorce Dan, I was spending years preparing for something exactly like this. I've got financial strategies they don't know about, legal protections they never considered, and backup plans for situations they can't even imagine. Remember how I mentioned in my first post that I've been building wealth through investments and side projects? Well, there's a lot more to that story. I've been systematically protecting myself from exactly this kind of family manipulation for the past 4 years. Every asset, every account, every legal document has been structured to prevent them from being able to destroy me financially. The storage units, which was just me letting them know I'm not the stupid, helpless victim they thought I was. But the real pressure hasn't even started yet. Monday morning is going to be very interesting for all 3 of these women. Let's just say that Geraldine's threats about having connections and resources are about to be tested in ways she never imagined. Lies unlocked. I promised you that Monday morning would be interesting for these women. That was an understatement. First, let me address some comments from my last update on Lies Unlocked. Yes, I know some of you think I should have just walked away and started fresh, but walking away would have meant letting them keep believing they could destroy people without consequences. These women spent months planning to humiliate me publicly and leave me homeless for their entertainment. Monday started early. Cassandra left for work around 7:30 a.m., still trying to act like everything was normal between us. She even kissed me goodbye and said she hoped we could talk more about fixing our marriage when she got home. I just nodded and told her to have a good day. At 8 a.m. sharp, I made my first move. See, during my 4 years of preparation, I hadn't just been building wealth and protecting assets. I'd been learning everything I could about each member of this family, their jobs, their finances, their dependencies, their pressure points. Information is power, and I'd been collecting it methodically. These women thought they knew everything about me, but they'd never bothered to actually pay attention to what I was capable of. They saw a quiet programmer who didn't make waves at family gatherings, and they assumed that meant I was weak and controllable. Cassandra works for a small marketing firm that handles social media campaigns for local businesses. What she doesn't know is that I've been freelancing web development services to 3 of their biggest clients for the past 2 years. Not through her company, directly with the business owners. At 8 a.m., I sent detailed proposals to all 3 clients, offering to handle their complete digital presence in-house for significantly less than what they're currently paying her company. By 9:15 a.m., I had signed contracts with 2 of them and a verbal commitment from the 3rd. Cassandra's firm just lost 60% of their revenue in 90 minutes. Sharon works as a rental property manager for a company that handles about 40 apartment units across town. What she doesn't realize is that I know her boss, Brandon, from college. We weren't close friends, but we stayed in loose contact through LinkedIn. At 10 a.m., I called Brandon and told him I needed to discuss a serious problem with one of his employees. I explained that Sharon had been using company resources for personal vendettas. specifically using her access to tenant information and management systems to coordinate harassment campaigns against family members. I didn't accuse her of anything illegal, I just laid out the facts. Sharon had used her work computer to research storage facilities for their Operation Divorce Dan. She'd scheduled personal activities during work hours, including the moving truck coordination. She'd even used the company vehicle for some of their stuff-moving trips. Brandon took it very seriously. By noon, Sharon was in a meeting with HR discussing her inappropriate use of company resources and violation of privacy policies. Bryn was next, and she was actually the easiest target. Bryn works part-time at a dental office and depends on weekend catering gigs to make ends meet. She's built up a decent reputation doing small events and parties around town. What makes this perfect is that most of her clients book her through social media recommendations and word-of-mouth referrals. I spent Monday afternoon creating detailed social media posts about my recent anniversary experience. Nothing defamatory, nothing that could get me in legal trouble, just honest accounts of how certain local service providers had disappointed me during what should have been a special celebration. I described how a catering coordinator I'd hired for a family event had been secretly working with relatives to sabotage the occasion. I posted screenshots of her own messages detailing her plans to ruin our celebration. I tagged every local event planning group, wedding venue, and party supply company in town. Posted in all the community Facebook groups where people regularly asked for catering recommendations. By Tuesday morning, Bryn had lost 3 upcoming weekend bookings and received several messages from potential clients saying they decided to go with other caterers. But Geraldine was the main event. Remember how she kept threatening me with her connections and resources? How she claimed her deceased husband had built a network of powerful people who could destroy me financially and professionally. Well, I decided to test those connections. See, Geraldine's husband used to own a small construction business before he passed away 5 years ago. After his death, she kept the business name and licensing active, even though she doesn't actually do construction work anymore. She uses it occasionally for tax purposes and to maintain some business credibility in social settings. What she doesn't know is that maintaining an active business license creates certain legal obligations and reporting requirements. And if you're not actually conducting business operations, there can be complications with licensing boards and regulatory agencies. Tuesday afternoon, I filed formal complaints with the State Contractor Licensing Board and the local business regulatory office. I documented how the business appears to be inactive despite maintaining active licensing. Raised questions about potential misrepresentation to regulatory agencies, and requested formal investigations into the business operations. Again, nothing illegal on my part, just a concerned citizen asking legitimate questions about business compliance and proper licensing procedures. But here's where it gets really interesting. By Wednesday morning, all 3 women were starting to panic. Cassandra came home Tuesday night devastated because her boss had called an emergency meeting about their client losses. Sharon was facing a formal investigation at work and possible termination. Bryn was frantically trying to rebuild her reputation while watching her weekend income disappear. And Geraldine, she'd received official notices from 2 different regulatory agencies, requesting documentation about her business operations and informing her of pending compliance reviews. Wednesday evening, they all showed up at my house together. This time there was no fake sweetness, no pretending everything was fine. They were furious and desperate, and they wanted answers. Cassandra was screaming that I was destroying innocent people's livelihoods over a stupid family disagreement. She kept saying that her coworkers were going to lose their jobs because of my vindictive behavior. Sharon kept demanding that I call Brandon and tell him that everything I'd reported was lies. She was panicking because she needed her job to pay for her car and apartment, and she couldn't afford to be unemployed. Bryn was crying and begging me to take down the social media posts, because she couldn't afford to lose her catering income. She said her rent was due next week, and she was counting on the weekend bookings to make her payment. But Geraldine was different. She wasn't begging or threatening anymore. She was calculating, trying to figure out exactly how much I knew and what I was planning next. She asked me directly what I wanted, what it would take for me to stop. She said they'd learned their lesson and would leave me alone if I would just stop targeting their jobs and businesses. That's when I told them the truth. This wasn't about teaching them a lesson or getting them to leave me alone. This was about showing them exactly what happens when you try to destroy someone who's been preparing for years to defend himself. I told them that everything they'd lost so far was just the beginning, that I'd spent 4 years building the resources and connections to protect myself from exactly what they tried to do to me. And now they were going to experience firsthand what it feels like to have someone systematically dismantle the life you've built. Geraldine asked me what I wanted, what they could do to make this stop. I told her there was nothing they could do. They'd made their choice when they decided to plan Operation Divorce Dan. Now they were going to live with the consequences. That's when she said something that made everything click into place. She told me that I had no idea what I was dealing with, that their family had been handling troublemakers like me for decades, and that I was about to learn why people in this town knew better than to cross them. She said they'd been protecting Cassandra from making mistakes her whole life, and that marrying me had been the biggest mistake she'd ever made. That they'd spent 10 years watching me hold their daughter back from her potential, and they weren't going to let me destroy her future. Finally, I understood why they hated me so much. It wasn't just about thinking I was beneath them. They genuinely believed I was ruining Cassandra's life by existing in it. From their perspective, I was the obstacle preventing their daughter from reaching her full potential. They saw me as dead weight holding her back from the successful husband they thought she deserved. In their minds, Operation Divorce Dan wasn't cruelty, it was an intervention. But understanding their motivation didn't change anything. If anything, it made me more determined to show them exactly how wrong they'd been about who was really in control here. I told them that what they'd experienced so far was just a preview of what real consequences looked like. That every move I'd made had been calculated and deliberate, designed to target the specific things each of them cared about most. Friday morning, they're all going to get a very special delivery that will make everything I've done so far look like practice rounds. Because the thing they still don't understand is that I'm not trying to teach them a lesson or get them to apologize. I'm systematically dismantling the comfortable lives they built while planning to destroy mine. And we're just getting started. Final update. Lies unlocked. This is my final update. What happened over the weekend was exactly what I'd been building toward for 4 years. Friday morning arrived and my promised special delivery was right on schedule. At 9 a.m. sharp, 3 different process servers showed up at 3 different addresses. Cassandra got served at her office, right in front of her coworkers. Sharon at her apartment building where all her neighbors could see. Bryn at the dental office where she works part-time. Geraldine got her delivery at home. The documents were eviction notices, but not the kind you might expect. See, here's what I never told any of them during our 10 years together. That house Cassandra and I live in, the one she thinks we both own? I bought it outright 3 years ago using profits from my side business ventures. Her name was never on the deed, never on the mortgage, never on any of the legal documents. She's been living there as my guest this entire time, completely unaware that she had no legal claim to the property. The eviction notice gave her 30 days to vacate the premises, citing irreconcilable differences and breakdown of the domestic partnership. Completely legal, completely enforceable. But that wasn't all. Sharon's apartment? Turns out the building is owned by a property investment group that I've been doing web development work for over the past 18 months. When I told them about my concerns regarding their property manager's misuse of company resources and potential liability issues, they took it very seriously. Her lease termination notice cited violations of building policies and potential conflicts of interest with the management company. Bryn rents a small house from an elderly couple who live out of state. What she doesn't know is that I've been handling their property management website and online rent collection system for the past year. When I informed them about their tenants' involvement in harassment campaigns and potential reputational damage to their property, they decided not to renew her month-to-month lease. And Geraldine, her situation was the most complicated, but also the most satisfying. The regulatory investigations I triggered had uncovered some interesting discrepancies in her business filings. Nothing criminal, but enough to create serious complications with her property taxes and homeowners insurance. Turns out maintaining an inactive business license while claiming residential property exemptions creates some messy legal gray areas. Her notice wasn't an eviction, it was a foreclosure warning. The complications with her business status had triggered a review of her mortgage terms, and some technical violations gave the bank grounds to call in the loan. By Friday afternoon, all 3 women had called me, not together this time, but separately, each trying a different approach. Cassandra came home crying, begging me to reconsider. She said she'd do anything to fix our marriage, that she'd cut off contact with her family completely if I would just let her stay. She promised to go to counseling, to change everything about herself to make up for the Operation Divorce Dan plan. She even offered to sign a post-nup agreement giving me complete control over our finances. I listened to every word and told her that her 30 days started today. Sharon called me around 6 p.m., absolutely frantic. She said losing her job and her apartment in the same week was going to destroy her financially. She offered to pay me money, to work for me for free, anything to convince me to call off the property managers. She kept saying she had learned her lesson and would never interfere in my life again. I told her that the consequences of her actions were just beginning to unfold. Bryn showed up at my house Saturday morning, sobbing uncontrollably. She said she'd already lost most of her catering clients and now she was going to be homeless, too. She kept asking what she could do to make this stop, what she could offer me to fix the situation. She said she had some savings and would give me every penny if I would just help her keep her rental house. I reminded her that she'd been excited about filming my reaction for TikTok when they thought they were destroying my life. I asked her how it felt to be on the other side of that equation. But Geraldine's response was different. She didn't beg or cry or offer me anything. She came to my house Saturday evening with a cold, calculating look, and told me that I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. She said her family had connections I couldn't imagine, resources I didn't understand, and ways of handling problems that I wasn't prepared for. She said she'd spent the past 2 days making phone calls, and that I was about to learn why people in this town knew better than to cross her family. I asked her how those connections were working out for her foreclosure problem. That's when she finally started to break. She admitted that most of her husband's old business contacts had moved away or retired over the past 5 years. That the powerful network she'd been threatening me with was mostly just memories and old business cards. She said she'd been trying to maintain an image of influence and control to protect her family's reputation, but that the reality was much different. Her husband's death had left her with more debts than assets, and she'd been struggling financially for years while pretending everything was fine. The business license issues weren't just bureaucratic problems. They were the final straw that exposed how precarious her situation really was. By Sunday morning, the reality was setting in for all of them. Cassandra had spent the weekend frantically calling family members and friends trying to find somewhere to stay. But word had gotten around about our marriage problems, and most people didn't want to get involved in what looked like a messy divorce situation. Sharon had been denied for emergency housing assistance because her income loss was too recent to qualify for programs. Her savings account couldn't cover a security deposit and first month's rent on a new place. Bryn had tried to stay with friends, but with her reputation destroyed in the local catering community, she couldn't offer any services in exchange for housing. She'd spent Saturday night in her car in a Walmart parking lot. And Geraldine, the foreclosure timeline was accelerated due to the business compliance issues. She had less than 2 weeks to come up with a substantial payment or find alternative housing. Sunday evening, they all showed up at my house together one final time. This wasn't the angry confrontation from earlier in the week. This was pure desperation. They stood on my doorstep looking exhausted, defeated, and scared. Cassandra had obviously been crying for hours. Sharon kept checking her phone like she was waiting for some miracle call. Bryn looked like she hadn't slept. Geraldine seemed to have aged 10 years in the past week. Cassandra spoke first, saying they were sorry for everything, that they'd never meant for things to go this far, that Operation Divorce Dan was just stupid family drama that got out of hand. Sharon said they realized they'd made a huge mistake, that they'd learned their lesson and would never do anything like this again. Bryn was crying while she talked, saying she was sorry for planning to film my humiliation, that she understood now how cruel and thoughtless it was. Geraldine said they were begging me to show mercy, that they'd all learned their lesson and just wanted a chance to rebuild their lives. I listened to every word, and then I told them exactly what I'd been planning to say for 4 years. I said that everything happening to them was the direct result of choices they'd made. That Operation Divorce Dan wasn't harmless family drama. It was a calculated plan to destroy my life for their entertainment. I reminded them that they'd wanted to film my reaction when I lost my home, my marriage, and my dignity. That they'd been excited about watching me suffer while they celebrated my destruction. I told them that the only difference between their plan and my response was that I'd actually succeeded. They kept begging, offering to do anything, promising to make amends however they could. I told them there was nothing they could offer me that would change the consequences of their actions. That they'd taught me exactly how much their family valued loyalty and respect. And now they were learning what it felt like to be on the receiving end of that lesson. As I closed the door, I could hear them outside discussing where they were going to sleep that night. It's been 3 days since then. I've seen Cassandra's car parked behind the grocery store where she's apparently spending her nights. Sharon has been staying in the parking lot of a 24-hour laundromat. Bryn and Geraldine have been sharing Geraldine's car, moving between different locations to avoid drawing attention from security or police. They've been texting me constantly, calling me, leaving voicemails. All variations of the same message. We're sorry, we didn't mean it. Please. The desperation in their voices grows more obvious with each message. Cassandra sent me a 40-minute voicemail yesterday just crying and apologizing over and over again, but I'm not answering. 4 years ago, when I first sensed their contempt and started preparing for this possibility, I promised myself that if they ever tried to destroy me, I would be ready to destroy them right back. I spent those years building my resources, establishing my connections, and positioning myself to be untouchable. They wanted to watch me lose everything while they laughed and filmed it for social media. Instead, they're sleeping in their cars while I'm living comfortably in my house, with my successful business and my financial security intact. The operation was called Divorce Dan. I guess you could say the operation was a complete success, just not the way they planned. Thanks for following this wild story on Lies Unlocked.
While out with her friends, she laughed. He's too scared to ever leave me. He'd fall apart without me. They all nodded. I just stayed quiet. The next week, I accepted a job offer in another city, packed my things, and left without a word. Weeks later, when she finally came back ready to beg, she froze because someone else was already living in my place. The final nail in the coffin of my relationship wasn't hammered in with a dramatic fight. It was slid into place with a quiet, confident laugh in a noisy, crowded bar. My girlfriend, Jenna, was holding court with her friends, a circle of women who seemed to think life was one long brunch special. I was on the edge of the group, nursing a beer, playing the part of the silent, supportive boyfriend. It was a role I had perfected over our 2 years together. They were talking about another couple's recent breakup. The guy had apparently been a mess, and Jenna's friend was saying how pathetic it was. That's when Jenna chimed in. She took a delicate sip of her cocktail, looked over at her friend, and gestured vaguely in my direction with her glass. "Oh, that would never happen with me," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's too scared to ever leave me. He'd fall apart without me." She laughed. Her friends all nodded and laughed with her, like she'd just stated the most obvious fact in the world. They looked at me, not with malice, but with a kind of pitying certainty. I was the safe bet, the quiet, introverted guy who worked from home and didn't have much of a social life outside of her. She was the sun, and I was just a small, insignificant planet caught in her orbit. I didn't react. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stayed quiet and took a slow drink of my beer. But inside, something went still and cold. It was the kind of clarity you get right after a car crash when the noise stops and you can suddenly see every piece of shattered glass on the pavement. She didn't just think I was dependent on her, she was proud of it. My perceived weakness was her source of power, her ultimate security. For 2 years I had arranged my life around her. I'm a senior data architect for a major financial firm. It's a complex, high-pressure job that I can do entirely remotely. I'm naturally a quiet person. I prefer a small circle and deep conversations over loud parties. She had mistaken my quietness for weakness, my preference for staying in as a sign of dependence. She saw herself as my entire social world, my connection to a life I was too timid to build for myself. In that moment, her words didn't just hurt me, they freed me. She had handed me the diagnosis of our terminal illness. And I am, if nothing else, a problem solver. I stayed for another 20 minutes, playing my part. Then I leaned over, kissed her cheek, and told her I was tired and heading home. She just waved me away, already deep in another story. "Okay, babe, don't wait up," she said, not even looking at me. I walked out of that bar, not as her dependent boyfriend, but as a free agent planning a hostile takeover of my own life. She thought I'd fall apart without her. She was about to find out I was the one who had been holding her up the entire time, and I was about to walk away and let her collapse under her own weight. She thought I was too scared to leave. She had no idea I was already gone. Update 1. It's been a week. 1 week since I walked out of that bar and into my new life. To Jenna, it's probably felt like a week of me giving her the silent treatment, a childish tantrum she was patiently waiting out. In reality, it was the most productive and decisive week of my entire life. Thanks for the comments on my last post. You guys who said to go completely dark were right on the money. No drama, no confrontation, just quiet, systematic erasure. The first thing I did when I got home from that bar was open my work laptop. For the past year, I had been turning down offers from headhunters. Recruiters were constantly reaching out with opportunities in other cities, major tech hubs like Austin, Seattle, Raleigh. I always politely declined because I was building a life here, with her. One recruiter in particular, a guy from a top firm in Austin, had been persistent. He had an offer for me to lead a new data infrastructure team at a rapidly expanding fintech company. It was a massive step up in both responsibility and pay. I found his email from 2 months ago. It was 11 p.m. on a Saturday night. I wrote back, "Hi David, hope you're well. Is that director position in Austin still on the table? If so, I'm interested in discussing it further. Best, Alex." I got a reply in less than 10 minutes. "Alex, great to hear from you. It is. Can you talk Monday?" While Jenna was sleeping off her cocktails, I was preparing for the biggest career move of my life. The interviews happened over the next 2 days via video conference. They were intense, technical, and exactly the kind of challenge I loved. By Wednesday afternoon, I had a formal offer in my inbox. The salary was 40% higher than my current pay, with a substantial signing bonus and equity. I signed the contract and sent it back within the hour. My start date was the following Monday. I had 5 days to move my entire life to another state. This is where my skills in logistics came in handy. I work with complex systems all day. My own life was just another system to reconfigure. First, the apartment. I own my condo. I bought it before I ever met her. She paid me a small amount for rent each month, a fraction of what it would actually cost, which she usually spent on clothes and brunches anyway. She had no legal claim to the space. Next, I called my younger brother, Matt, and his wife, Sarah. They had gotten married 6 months ago and were living in a cramped apartment an hour outside the city, struggling to save for a down payment on a house. They are 2 of the best people I know, hardworking and completely devoted to each other. I called Matt and put it to him straight. "I'm moving to Austin for a new job. I'm leaving on Sunday. I want you and Sarah to move into my place. The furniture, the TV, everything is yours. Live here, rent-free, for as long as you need to save up for your own house. Just pay the utilities and the HOA fees. It's my wedding present to you." He was speechless. He thought I was joking. When he finally realized I was serious, he got emotional. He and Sarah came over the next day to see the place again, this time as their new home. Seeing the joy on their faces, the way they looked at each other and planned where they would put their things, it was one of the best moments of my life. It confirmed I was doing the right thing. Then came the packing. I hired a long-distance moving company. I only packed my essentials, my clothes, my books, my computer equipment, and a few personal items. Everything else, the high-end furniture I'd bought, the top-of-the-line kitchen appliances, the 75-inch OLED TV, I was leaving for Matt and Sarah. I had the movers pack up all of Jenna's things. Every last piece of clothing, every shoe, every makeup palette. It all went into boxes. I rented a storage unit a few miles away and paid for 3 months in advance. I had the movers take all of her boxes there. During this entire time, Jenna was sending me a steady stream of texts. They started as annoyed. "Are you still pouting?" Then moved to angry. "This is so immature, Alex. Just talk to me." And finally to slightly concerned. "Okay, I'm getting a little worried. Are you okay?" I never responded. I put her on mute. On Saturday, the day before I left, I did the final cleanup. I had all the locks on the condo changed. I wrote a short, simple letter. I put it in an envelope along with the key to the storage unit, the access code, and the address. I also included a cashier's check for the total amount of rent she had paid me over the past 2 years. A full refund. I didn't want a single dollar of her money. I left the envelope with the concierge at the front desk of my building, with instructions to only give it to Jenna personally. On Sunday morning, the movers came for my things. Matt and Sarah arrived with a U-Haul of their own boxes an hour later. I gave them their new keys, walked them through how the smart home system worked, and showed them the bottle of champagne I'd left for them in the fridge. We hugged, I wished them well, and then I was gone. I drove my car 1,000 miles to my new life in Austin. I didn't look back. Jenna thought I was too scared to even argue with her. She has no idea that I just dismantled our entire life and rebuilt a new one 1,000 miles away, all without saying a single word to her. She thinks I'm still in the city, sulking in my apartment. She's about to get the biggest shock of her life. She thinks he'd fall apart without her. He didn't. He just left. Final update. It's been a month since I moved to Austin, and it's been the best month of my life. My new job is incredible, challenging, rewarding, and full of smart people. I found a great apartment downtown, and I'm starting to explore the city. The silence from my old life has been deafeningly peaceful. But I knew the storm had to break eventually. It did, last night, and I got a front row seat to the aftermath courtesy of my brother Matt. He called me around 10 p.m., his voice a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "Dude," he said, "you are not going to believe what just happened." He then relayed the story of the past few weeks from his perspective. Apparently, Jenna finally went to the apartment building about 3 weeks ago after a full week of me being gone. The concierge gave her my letter. Matt said he wished he could have seen her face when she read it. Her world, as she knew it, had evaporated. She went to the storage unit and found her mountain of belongings. She tried calling me, but my number was already disconnected. She emailed me, but I have a filter that sends anything from her straight to the trash. She was locked out, cut off, and completely in the dark. According to a mutual acquaintance who was still talking to her, her first reaction was rage. She told all her friends I was a psycho who had a breakdown and vanished. She played the victim card hard. But the narrative started to fall apart when her friends realized she was suddenly homeless and broke. The free dinners, the fancy apartment, the endless river of my money. It was all gone. And without that, she wasn't as interesting to them. She had to move in with one of her friends, a temporary arrangement that was clearly straining. She apparently spent weeks trying to figure out what to do, all the while building up this story in her head that I had just done this to punish her and that I would eventually come crawling back, because after all, I couldn't possibly survive without her. That brings us to last night. She finally decided it was time to play her final card, the tearful, begging apology. She was going to show up at my, now Matt and Sarah's door, ready to cry and forgive me for being so cruel, ready to take me back and fix everything. Matt said they were watching a movie when there was a loud, insistent knock on the door. He opened it to find Jenna standing there. She had clearly prepared for this moment. Her eyes were already red, her face was set in an expression of tragic sorrow. She had her whole speech ready. She didn't even look at Matt. She just looked past him into the apartment, expecting to see me. "Alex," she began, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. "I know I messed up. I was wrong. Please, can we just talk? I'll do anything. I can't live without you." Matt, bless his heart, just stood there, completely baffled. He's a big, friendly guy, and he had no idea who this strange, crying woman was. "I'm sorry," he said. I think you have the wrong apartment. My name's Matt. Jenna's face froze. The performance just stopped. She looked at him, really looked at him this time. Then she looked past him again, and she started to notice the little changes. The wedding photo of Matt and Sarah on the entry table, the different throw pillows on the couch, the pair of women's shoes by the door that were definitely not her size or style. "What?" she stammered. "Where's Alex?" "This is his apartment." "Oh, Alex is my brother," Matt said cheerfully. "He moved to Austin a month ago for a new job. He's letting my wife and me live here while we save for a house. It was incredibly generous of him." At that moment, Matt's wife, Sarah, came to the door to see who it was. She's a sweet, down-to-earth girl, the complete opposite of Jenna. She smiled kindly at the confused woman on their doorstep. Matt said the look on Jenna's face was something he would never forget. It was the look of a person whose entire reality had just been fed into a wood chipper. The story she had told herself for weeks, that I was close by, pining for her, waiting for her to come and save me, was a lie. I wasn't in a corner, falling apart. I was 1,000 miles away, thriving. I hadn't just left her. I had replaced her life in my apartment with a better one, a happier one, for people I actually cared about. The final brutal blow was the realization that I hadn't just abandoned her. I had given away the entire lifestyle she thought was hers to my brother, for free, as a gift. The home, the furniture, the life of comfort, it was all still there. She just wasn't invited to it anymore. "He's in Austin?" she whispered, the words barely audible. "Yeah, he loves it there," Matt said. "He's doing great." Jenna just stood there for a long moment, completely silent. The fake tears were gone, replaced by a blank, hollow look. She had built her entire sense of self-worth on the idea that I was weak and she was strong. In one conversation, on one doorstep, that entire foundation was obliterated. She wasn't the one in control. She was just an inconvenience, a stranger at the door of a happy couple's home. She didn't say another word. She just turned around and walked away. Matt told me he and Sarah felt a little bad for her, but mostly they were just amazed at how thoroughly I had planned my exit. I hung up the phone and looked out at the Austin skyline from my new balcony. I felt nothing for her. No anger, no pity, not even satisfaction, just a profound sense of peace. She had predicted I would fall apart without her, but she had it all backward. I had to leave her in order to put myself together, and I've never felt more whole.
Parents gave their entire estate to my sister, because I was too independent, so my grandfather shocked everyone by writing me a $2 million check at the family dinner, and then cut them all out of his will. I arrived at my parents' house that evening with a knot of unease twisting in my stomach. It was one of those rare family gatherings where everyone made an effort to show up, dressed to impress and armed with polite small talk that almost felt a little forced. The reason for the meeting? My parents had hinted at discussing the future of their personal estate, a topic that had been lingering unspoken for years. I wasn't holding my breath, though. If history had taught me anything, it was that I rarely came out of these situations feeling anything other than sidelined. My sister, Tanya, was already at the center of attention, basking in the glow of everyone's compliments. She wore a smug smile, the kind that hinted she knew something the rest of us didn't. Watching her, I couldn't help but feel the familiar sting of being overshadowed. Tanya had always been my parents' golden child, coddled, praised, and excused no matter what. I, on the other hand, had learned early on that hard work and self-reliance were my only allies. The formalities dragged on, and just as I was debating whether sneaking out would be too obvious, my father clinked his glass, calling for attention. My mother stood beside him, her face glowing with an excitement that immediately made me wary. They began their announcement with a flourish, speaking about family legacy and how much they valued the future of our bloodline. I listened, my nerves tightening with every word. And then it came the bombshell. They were handing their entire estate to Tanya. Not half, not even a small share for me. Everything. My ears rang as I struggled to process their reasoning. My father said Tanya needed more support because she was the younger sibling, as if her age somehow made her incapable of standing on her own. My mother chimed in, praising Tanya's supposed future plans and how the estate would help her achieve them. Then, almost as an afterthought, they turned to me and said they believed I was independent enough to manage without help. My father even added that I should work harder if I wanted success, as though my years of grinding away had counted for nothing. The room felt like it was closing in on me. I managed to ask why they thought this was fair. My voice was shaky despite my effort to sound calm. My father waved me off, dismissing my concerns with a condescending smile. He said it wasn't about fairness, it was about doing what's best for the family. Tanya, of course, couldn't resist rubbing salt in the wound. She made some snide comments about how she had earned this because of her big plans and how I didn't need the burden of managing the estate. Her tone was syrupy and sweet, but her words were barbed, cutting deeper than I thought possible. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to tell them how their decision made me feel like an outsider in my own family. But what was the point? They had made up their minds, and no amount of reasoning would change the fact that I had been pushed aside yet again. The rest of the room watched in awkward silence, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to step in. I could see a few sympathetic glances from extended family members, but none of them spoke up. I sat there, stunned and humiliated, while my parents and Tanya basked in their self-congratulatory glow. The room was thick with awkward silence, the kind that followed a bombshell no one saw coming. I was still processing my parents' announcement. Tanya, who was seated across from me, practically glowed with smugness. Her triumph was etched across her face. I wanted to leave, to escape the suffocating tension, but before I could move, my grandpa cleared his throat. It was a small sound, yet it sliced through the tension like a blade. All eyes turned to him. He had been quiet the entire evening, sitting at the far end of the table with what I had assumed was disinterest. But now his expression was sharp, his gaze fixed on my parents with a calm intensity that carried a warning. He said he had heard just about enough. His voice was steady but carried an unmistakable weight. My father attempted to protest, starting to say something about it not being his place, but my grandpa raised a hand, silencing him. He told my father to let him finish and said this charade had gone on long enough. There was a collective murmur of confusion as he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. My heart was beating fast, and I wasn't entirely sure why. With deliberate movements, he scribbled something onto a check and then stood up and walked over to me. He placed it in my trembling hands. He said the check was for me $2 million, his personal gift. His voice carried through the room with an air of finality. Everybody seemed frozen. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. I stared at the check in disbelief, the weight of the gesture sinking in. Tanya was the first to break the silence. Her voice was shrill as she demanded to know what was going on. She sputtered about fairness, asking why I was getting this money and not her. Grandpa's gaze snapped to her, sharp and unwavering. He told her that if she wanted to talk about fairness, then they should discuss it properly. His words were clipped, filled with a controlled anger that made everyone sit up straighter. He turned to my parents, his voice rising slightly as he addressed them. He said he had spent years watching them coddle Tanya, enabling her selfishness while ignoring all the effort I had put in to make something of myself. My mother flushed red with embarrassment, and my father's face twisted with discomfort. They started to mumble something about Tanya being younger and needing more support, but Grandpa cut them off sharply. He said age had nothing to do with it. He called out their blatant favoritism and said this was about character. He gestured toward Tanya and said they had inflated her ego to the point where she thought the world owed her everything. Tanya gasped in disbelief, trying to defend herself. She claimed she had worked hard too, even if no one had noticed. Grandpa fixed her with a glare and asked her to name one thing she had truly worked hard at. He pointed out that all he had seen was her spending their money and making empty promises about plans she never followed through on. He said that if she considered that hard work, then she was more deluded than he thought. My parents tried to interject again, saying they were within their rights to make decisions about their own estate, but Grandpa waved them off. He said they were free to make their decisions, and he was free to make his own. He explained that the money was meant for me as a reward for my resilience and integrity, qualities he had always valued but rarely saw acknowledged in this family. Tears stung my eyes, not because of the money, but because of the validation. For once, someone had recognized my efforts, my struggles, and my worth. Tanya, unable to contain her emotions, slammed her hands on the table, demanding that Grandpa explain himself again. She insisted that this was an insult, not just to her, but to the entire family. She accused him of playing favorites and claimed that I had somehow manipulated him into giving me the money. I felt my face burn with frustration. Manipulation? I had spent years quietly enduring their blatant favoritism, their constant dismissal of my efforts, and now I was the manipulative one? My parents jumped in to support Tanya, their voices rising as they tried to convince Grandpa to reconsider. My father said that rewarding me this way would create unnecessary divisions in the family, while my mother chimed in that Tanya was still young and needed guidance, not punishment. Their words were dripping with hypocrisy. I had had enough. I refused to stay silent. I told them that this so-called division had always existed, but they had ignored it because it suited them. I reminded them how they had belittled me for choosing to work hard, all while praising Tanya for doing nothing. I asked them how they could stand there and accuse me of being greedy when they had just handed their entire estate to her under the pretense of fairness. Tanya shot back, calling me ungrateful and petty, claiming that I was jealous of her success. Success? I laughed bitterly and told her that living off handouts and demanding more wasn't success, it was entitlement. The argument spiraled, with Tanya throwing a tantrum, shouting about how unfair life was and how I had always been jealous of her. My parents tried to pin the blame on me for escalating things, saying I should have just been grateful for what I had. That was when Grandpa stepped in again. He raised his voice, louder than I'd ever heard it, silencing the room. He told my parents they had no right to talk about fairness or family unity when they had spent years fostering this toxic dynamic. He reminded Tanya that nothing in life was guaranteed and warned her that her entitlement would be her downfall. His words stung everyone, even me, though for different reasons. As the room fell silent once more, I realized this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about finally being seen, finally being heard. Tanya, of course, couldn't let it go. She wailed about how unfair it was. She asked if she didn't deserve something too. Grandpa's tone turned icy as he told her she had already been handed everything on a silver platter, yet she still complained. He said she was lucky he hadn't stripped my parents' inheritance altogether and given it to me instead. The room erupted into chaos. My parents were shouting, Tanya was on the verge of tears, and the rest of the family whispered furiously among themselves. Through it all, Grandpa remained calm, his point made. Before he left, he turned to me, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. He told me to use the money wisely and left the room without another word. His exit left a stunned silence in his wake. None of what happened erased the years of neglect or hurt, but I want to keep the check. What should I do? Update 1. A week had passed since that chaotic family gathering, and things still felt heavy. It wasn't just the argument that lingered, it was the aftermath, the real impact of everything that had happened. I was still processing the conversation with my parents, the way they had dismissed me like I was nothing, as if all my years of hard work meant nothing compared to my sister's entitlement. It stung. Then, one afternoon, my grandpa showed up at my door. I wasn't expecting him, but the sight of him there brought a sense of calm I didn't realize I needed. He looked around the living room, taking in the modest space, and then glanced at me, almost as if seeing me in a new light. He always had this quiet sophistication about him, never one to get involved in the drama, but this time, he wasn't holding back. He came in without saying much, but his presence was solid. Finally, after a moment, he spoke, a little softer than usual. He told me he just wanted to check in and see how I was doing after everything that had happened. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until he said it. I let out a breath, half laughing, half sighing, and told him that I was doing as well as could be expected. It had been tough, of course, but I was managing. I didn't want to dump everything on him, so I kept it brief. I didn't want myself to dwell too much on the hurt that still lingered. He didn't push. He just nodded in understanding. But then he looked at me seriously. He said that he should have stepped in sooner, that he should have called out the way my parents treated me, how they'd always put my sister on a pedestal while overlooking all my efforts. It was hard to hear him say that, but his words were sincere. I told him I hadn't expected him to step in. I'd always known what they were like, and I'd made my peace with it. But it still hurt, especially now, seeing how little they thought of me. Grandpa nodded again. His expression was soft. He said that I shouldn't let them define my worth anymore, that I had earned every bit of what was coming to me. And then he told me, in his quiet way, that I didn't need to keep chasing their approval. I had a chance now, a real chance, to build something for myself with the money he had given me. He said that I had the power to create my own future, and how I used that money was left to my judgment. I asked him, though, how to move forward. If it was really okay for me to use that money? What if I messed up? What if I didn't know what to do with it all? He smiled at me, not in a condescending way, but with that familiar, patient wisdom. He told me not to worry about wasting it, and that the important thing was to take my time, think things through, and reach out for help when I needed it. He'd be there for me every step of the way, guiding me if I wanted it. We spent a few more hours talking about my options, about investments, about what I could do with the $2 million. He told me to meet with financial advisors, suggested I look into mentoring opportunities, and encouraged me to keep learning. It was a lot to process, but I felt lighter as we talked. I wasn't on my own in this. I had someone in my corner, and he actually believed in me. As he stood to leave, he put a hand on my shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. He told me he was proud of me, that he always had been, and that I should never forget it. Update 2. 4 months had passed, and things had certainly changed. My sister, having taken full control of the estate, was already in over her head. I never would have guessed it, but she managed to make a mess of what was supposed to be a smooth transition. It wasn't even that she didn't have the resources, she had everything handed to her on a silver platter. But I guess when everything's given to you, there's no drive to make sure it lasts. First, she decided to liquidate most of the family's assets, claiming it was for some necessary upgrades to the estate. I heard from a cousin that she'd sold off a bunch of antique furniture stuff that had been in the family for decades just so she could redecorate. And the renovations? Well, she went for the most extravagant, overpriced contractors, promising them the world. They took her money and did half the work. Her own stubbornness had her refusing to hear anyone out when they told her to slow down and actually plan for the future. Meanwhile, the debts started piling up. She didn't even notice when the cash was running low. My parents, of course, were still blind to her failings. They kept defending her, saying she was doing her best and that the family should be more supportive. But, honestly, I wasn't surprised. Word of what was happening spread fast, not in a dramatic way, but people started talking, as they always do. My family's financial troubles started showing up in places they couldn't hide. A few of the business partners had pulled out after hearing about the state of things. Extended family members, the ones who had once admired my parents for their stability, began distancing themselves. They weren't interested in being attached to someone who couldn't even hold their ground. I kept hearing little updates here and there about how she'd made a bad deal with a contractor, or how she spent an entire month hiring consultants who only gave vague advice and emptied the bank account in the process. It was embarrassing to watch. I couldn't help but feel a little smug, though. I knew she couldn't handle what had been given to her, and eventually, she'd have to face it. But the real kicker came when I found out my parents had tried to cover up some of the mess by hiding financial documents and pretending everything was still fine. They were already trying to act like nothing had changed, as if the whole world hadn't seen their prized possession crumble. I wasn't there for the fallout. I didn't have to be. I had long walked away from that circus. But I did get the occasional call from relatives asking about the family. Some even offered their condolences about how things had gone south, calling my sister unlucky. The family's reputation wasn't just tarnished, it was in shambles. And, in some strange way, I found myself almost happy. The people who had dismissed me for so long were now facing the consequences of their own poor decisions. And I had nothing to do with it. For a while, I just let it all happen. It wasn't my problem anymore. I had my own life to focus on. And it was better that way. Am I too vengeful for being happy about this? Update 3. Every decision seemed worse than the last, from draining resources on unnecessary luxuries to alienating everyone who could have helped her. I wasn't surprised, but I can't deny my parents' stupidity for still indulging her. What happened next was inevitable. Word got out about the mounting debts, the unpaid but useless contractors, and the disappearing assets. A few more businesses that had been part of the family's portfolio pulled out, refusing to deal with a sinking ship. The phone calls my parents had been avoiding finally came to a head when the creditors started showing up. Bills piled up. The lawyers moved in. I heard all of this secondhand, of course. People I hadn't spoken to in years were happy to share the gossip, and it seemed like every other day there was some new update. But what stuck with me the most wasn't the fall from grace that my family was enduring. It was the call I received from my mother that one evening. I hadn't spoken to her since that night, hadn't even given her the time of day. But there she was, calling me like nothing had happened, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Her voice had that unmistakable tinge of desperation. She told me things were getting bad, and that they were working on it, but she didn't ask for help, not right away. Instead, she threw in some half-hearted pleas about how they were trying to fix it all. She didn't need to say much, it was obvious they were on the edge of losing everything. Then the tone shifted, just like I knew it would. She shifted the blame, as she always did. She tried to make it sound like they just hadn't seen it coming, as if they had been blindsided by their own decisions. "You know, we always thought you'd be there for us," she said, almost trying to guilt-trip me. I stayed silent for a long while, waiting for her to get to the point. Eventually, she asked, not so subtly, if I could help. There was a catch, of course. She didn't say please or acknowledge the fact that the whole mess had started because of their poor choices. No, she made it sound like I owed them something now. "You've got the money, don't you? Maybe you could lend a hand to the family." I was angry, but I kept myself in check. I simply hung up. It was better to not engage with trash. I hadn't forgotten what they'd said to me, the things they'd told me about working harder and earning my own success. I hadn't forgotten how my mother had dismissed me so easily, or how my sister had basked in her undeserved victory. And then, as I expected, my sister called. I didn't answer. The voicemail she left was similar, but this time it had a touch of manipulation. She started with an apology, claiming she'd been stressed and had made mistakes. She told me how bad things had gotten and begged for me to step in and help save the family from ruin as it was my responsibility as an elder sister. She even said that the estate was too much for her to handle, that she wasn't prepared, and that if I helped her, maybe things could be fixed. She was practically begging for the check to get cashed again. I listened to the whole message, the desperation dripping from every word. When I finally dialed her number back, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. She didn't deserve that. I stayed calm, but the disgust in my voice was unmistakable as I asked if she really expected me to help. After everything that had happened, did she honestly think I'd swoop in and fix it all? She stammered, trying to play the family card, as always, but I was done listening to that nonsense. She had done nothing but squander everything handed to her, and now she was asking me to bail her out. I reminded her of the words she had used to dismiss me so easily, the words that had stuck with me for so long. She had told me to work harder, that I didn't deserve anything handed to me. Well, now it was her turn and I rubbed that in her face. She tried to interrupt, but I wasn't letting her off that easily. I told her that I had worked my entire life to get where I was, and not once had anyone helped me. I'd had to fight for everything, especially against her selfishness, entitlement, and all the demands my family had placed on me without resources. And now, when it was all falling apart, she thought I was going to fix it for her. No, that wasn't going to happen. She sounded exasperated on the other end of the line, as if she thought she could guilt me into something. She mentioned how I had the money just sitting there, like that somehow meant I owed her something. I cut her off before she could go further, telling her exactly what I thought. "You think that means I owe you?" I said. "I'm not your backup plan. I don't owe you anything, and I certainly don't owe you my success." I could practically hear her frustration, but I wasn't done yet. I made it clear that I had made my choice a long time ago, and unlike her, I wasn't about to keep making the same mistakes over and over. I hung up without another word, and I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. The calls kept coming: my mother, my sister, even some extended family members. They all had the same story, the same excuses, and the same desperate plea for help. They were all looking for someone to take the fall for their failures. But none of them were getting anything from me. I didn't take their calls anymore. I didn't need to. In the end, they won't get a dime from me. Not a single cent. And I didn't feel a shred of guilt. Update 4, the room was tense, with everyone sitting in a nervous silence. Everybody was glancing awkwardly at each other. The dust hadn't settled from the last family meeting. The family was still reeling from the fallout. My parents had spent the last couple of days pleading with me, trying to play the role of the remorseful victims. They begged for forgiveness, but the words always felt hollow. Then, just as I thought the noise of their requests would become too much to bear, my grandpa called for a family meeting. He hadn't been a part of the chaos in the aftermath of the dinner. He had chosen to just observe. Now, it was his turn to speak. I saw my parents seated there, still looking somewhat disheveled from the ordeal. I knew this was going to be a conversation none of us would forget. My sister was there, too, her face flushed with embarrassment, eyes darting around as if she could make everyone change their minds with just a look. Grandpa stood at the front, tall and commanding as always, his sharp eyes piercing through the tension. Without a word, he took his seat at the head of the table, his usual calm demeanor replaced by something colder, more resolute. I took my seat across from him, not sure what to expect. I had learned by now that nothing with this family was ever straightforward. Grandpa began, his voice cutting through the uneasy silence as he calmly said he was sure we were all wondering why he'd called this meeting. He then added that the time had come for him to set things right. The time for excuses was over. My sister shifted in her seat, crossing her arms tighter as if preparing for a battle. My parents were already looking at each other, exchanging nervous glances. Grandpa continued, stating that for too long, he had watched my parents make foolish decisions, and how my sister was more disappointing than he had anticipated. He admitted that he'd been too passive and too forgiving for far too long, but now, that was no longer the case. The words hung in the air, heavy and pointed. It felt like I was holding my breath, unsure of where this was going. Grandpa's voice grew stronger as he declared he had decided to amend his will. He stood, taking his time, and with a sharp look at my parents, told us that their inheritance was now revoked. The words hit with a force that left the room still. My mother's face turned pale, and my father's mouth opened, though no words came out. Their shock was transparent. My sister's expression twisted with disbelief, her mouth slightly ajar as she glanced from Grandpa to our parents. I knew something big was coming, but I hadn't expected it to happen like this. Grandpa's declaration echoed in the room, reverberating through the silence. My sister, unable to keep her composure any longer, let out a stunned gasp before she blurted out, asking how Grandpa could do such a thing. She demanded to know why he was punishing her, claiming she had done nothing wrong. Grandpa didn't hesitate, cutting her off. He coldly stated that she had spent her life acting entitled, believing that everything was owed to her and that my parents had enabled her selfishness. He went on to explain how my parents had fostered a climate where I was constantly forced to prove myself, where my hard work was taken for granted, while my sister's demands were always met with indulgence. He then turned to my parents, his eyes narrowing with anger. "You didn't help anyone," he said, his voice low and sharp. "You crippled your daughter with your favoritism, and you've set your own daughter up for failure with your selfishness. Now, the bill is coming due." My mother was wiping her eyes with a handkerchief, but the tears weren't just from sadness, they were from shame. My father had his hands clenched on the table, his knuckles white, as he tried to find the words to defend himself. But Grandpa didn't let him speak, his gaze cutting through the room like a blade. My sister was visibly trembling, her face flushed with humiliation, her mouth working as if she could find some way to undo everything Grandpa had just said. But the words weren't coming. She sat in stunned silence, her gaze darting between Grandpa and me as if she couldn't believe the turn this conversation had taken. My parents tried to apologize, their voices now trembling. My mother, with tears streaming down her face, whispered how sorry she was, how they never meant to make me feel less than. My father, sounding weak for the first time, muttered about how they never wanted things to go this far. But their apologies felt like empty words because I could see the viciousness in their gaze. They just wanted to regain control over the situation they had created. Everybody knew better than to take sides after that, or they might just be cut out of the will too. 2 days later, I received a message from them, a final attempt at trying to gain access to my money. They apologized again, expressing regret for their behavior and asking for forgiveness. But I didn't need to hear it. The words didn't carry the weight they once might have. I had already forgiven them, but that didn't mean I was going to let them back into my life. Not now, not ever. I just wanted to let go of the bitterness that had been with me for so long so I could run towards the future Grandpa had helped me secure.